Chapter 261, Wolverine Wants Redemption. Mr. Stark, B-15, the TVA female executive who'd been quiet until now, called to Mr. Lion. She walked over to him. "Thank you for taking care of Cassandra, that Omega-level mutant. Because of her power, we had no choice before but to come to an understanding, to agree not to interfere with each other," she continued. Her building up power in the Voidland and interfering with Elios's operations has always been a hidden danger. It could one day affect the operation of the multiverse. Thanks to you, she's finally dead, and the Voidland can return to normal. Mr. Lion waved a hand. "She just happened to get shot by my gun, that's all. And please, just call me Mr. Lion. After all, there are already 2 Starks here." "All right, Mr. Lion," B-15 smiled. "I don't know how to thank you. How about this? When we get back, we hold a celebration banquet for you." "A celebration banquet? You're trying to use that as an excuse to recruit me back into your Anchor People team, aren't you?" Mr. Lion spread his hands. "Don't even think about it. I already said I wouldn't join. If you want to thank me, how about giving me a few of those Infinity Stones from your bureau?" He grinned. "I don't need many. 100 or 80 would do." 100 or 80? B-15 blinked, then, surprisingly, agreed. "Sure, that's no problem." She looked puzzled. "But what would you even do with those worthless stones? To be honest, they're not even good as paperweights." "They're useless in the TVA," Mr. Lion said. "But what if I take them back to my universe?" B-15's expression changed as she understood. "Mr. Lion, you might not realize, the Infinity Stones in the TVA are mostly items pruned from timelines long ago. They were forged from the essence of singularities, 6 singularities of immense energy at the Big Bang. The true infinite energy belonged to the singularities and to the universes born from them, not to the stones themselves. The stones do possess great power, but largely as a lever to access a universe's infinite energy. When those universes die, stones made from singularity essence don't retain their original potency. If you take them back, they may still function, but they'll be far weaker than the Infinity Stones native to your universe. If you want them to make you stronger or to study universal rules, the effect will be minimal." "I suspected as much," Mr. Lion said, satisfied. "Doesn't matter. If they're still useful at all, when we get to the TVA you can show me and I'll pick 2 to take with me." "Of course. No problem. Then let's return now." B-15 produced her time tablet, and then Deadpool suddenly screamed. Everyone looked up. Wolverine was on top of Deadpool, repeatedly driving his claws in. Every time he stabbed, he cursed, voice low and wild. "Happy now? Happy being a failure? Happy your friends are all going to die? I'll make you happy, you bastard." Wolverine's claws found arteries with brutal precision. The loss of blood made the scene gruesome for a moment. "It looks painful. Why are they fighting so badly? Did Deadpool bring Wolverine here?" Gwen asked. "It's more than that," B-15 said. "This Wolverine is one of the most tragic people in the multiverse." She told them the bare bones of his story. The X-Men once invited him to join, but he couldn't accept then and refused. Later, he came back to Xavier's school, drunk, and found everyone, Professor X, Jean, Storm, dead. He snapped and hunted down those he believed responsible. Not only villains, but many superheroes and ordinary people were killed. He became a notorious villain in his own world. Right now, by hurting and cursing Deadpool, he's really venting and trying to punish himself. "So detailed," Gwen exclaimed. "Do all your TVA staff know every single person from every world?" B-15 smiled. "It's not you, it's us. Now you and the other Peters are TVA personnel too. You can learn about the multiverse's stories." "That sounds awesome. I'll report for duty at the TVA every day from now on," Gwen beamed. "No, that's not awesome at all," Deadpool grumbled from the ground. B-15's voice wasn't loud, but both Wolverine and Deadpool heard it. Wolverine paused, the sweeping motion stopping. His claws were buried in Deadpool's chest. His face, suppressed and distant, seemed to hold a desolate world. "Oh my God, you never told me about your past? Otherwise, I wouldn't have been so angry. You're more miserable than me," Deadpool continued, true to form, trying to needle Wolverine. He achieved the effect. Wolverine's expression twisted, and with a sudden twist of his claws, Deadpool screamed. "Shut up! Idiot!" Wolverine snarled. "Ow, ow, stop, wait, Deadpool scrambled to backpedal. Then he caught sight of B-15, and an idea lit up. Look, the TVA can time travel, and there's a TVA employee right here. Why don't you ask her to fix the past? Change the past. Logan froze and looked at B-15. I'm afraid not, B-15 said gently. Changing the past creates a new timeline. Your world won't be changed, Logan. A new timeline where no one died? Logan pulled his claws free and stood. Is that possible? Yes, B-15 said, but there will also be a version of you in that timeline. Enough, Logan strode up to her. Please let me make up for it. I'll do anything. This probably isn't within the rules. B-15 began to refuse. No, 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 Deadpool cut in, suddenly enthusiastic. Madam, haven't you noticed Logan is a fantastic employee? Help him heal his regrets, and he'll be the TVA's most dedicated worker. Think of recruitment morale. When people see you fix regrets, they'll want to sign up too. Deadpool ran over, flashed his trademark grin, and lunged to pick Mr. Lion up in a mock embrace. Mr. Lion promptly flattened Deadpool's head with a single punch. Still, his sales pitch had landed. B-15 hesitated, glancing between Mr. Lion and Logan, and finally sighed. We'll discuss it when we get back to the TVA. She didn't agree outright, but her tone had softened. Logan's face loosened into a small, relieved smile. Deadpool, blood leaking from a new bump on his head, lay on the ground and gave a thumbs up. Mr. Lion stepped back and looked off into the distance. A small dog, wearing a janky Deadpool costume, tongue-lolling, sparse fur, and comically ugly, came barreling toward them. Behind it churned a cloud of dust, and in that dust roared a motorcycle gang made up entirely of Deadpool variants. They came fast. The motorcycle herd thundered toward them, engines roaring, the ground itself seeming to shudder as they closed the distance. It was like a stampede, mammoths on a blind date, and every one of them ravenous. The spider sense in all three Peters screamed at once. It felt as if an alarm clock had been shoved into the back of their skulls. They're here again! They're here again! Holland's Spider-Man yelped like a startled cat. Who's here again? Tony asked, taken aback. Wolverine squinted toward the dust. Deadpools. A whole mess of Deadpools. I can smell them. Deadpool stuck a thumb at Logan. When did you go from Wolverine to Deadpool sniffer? What do Deadpools smell like? Guys, you've got it all wrong, Deadpool protested, drawing his swords with a flourish. I'm as fresh as a just-bathed avocado. No weird smells here. He planted himself in front of everyone. This time, I'll shield you from all the perverts and prove Deadpool is the best, body and soul. Those Deadpools are perverts. Aren't you one of them? Garfield Spider said, unconvinced. Deadpool twirled a blade. Then I'll tell them Peter belongs only to me. He struck a heroic pose, sword raised, facing the rolling dust. For a second, the Peters actually believed it, until a bald, panting dog broke away from the lead of the Deadpool pack. All the younger spiders immediately recognized it. Wait, didn't Deadpool turn into a dog once? Garfield muttered. He wasn't the only one thinking it. A clatter, Ikatana clanged onto the ground. Deadpool went blank, sank to his knees, and reached out to the running dog like it was a long-lost soulmate. Oh my God, look at this little guy. He's practically me. Any notion of bravado evaporated. The hero of doom collapsed before the enemy's single, utterly weaponized tactic, cute puppy energy. The Peters slapped their foreheads in unison. I knew he was hopeless, they groaned. Don't you think he's adorable? Deadpool cooed, waving. Come here, little guy, come! 3 meters out, the dog leapt. Deadpool opened his arms, ready for the meeting of the century. At the last second, the dog veered straight into Garfield's arms and began slobbering all over his face. No, what is wrong with its tongue? Hey, stop it! Garfield yelped as the dog's sticky kisses continued. Ugh, its drool smells exactly like Deadpool. He scowled, snatched the dog, and chucked it at Holland. Holland got licked, screamed, then heaved it toward Toby. Don't! Mary Jane will kill me tonight. Toby threw it back. The dog landed in Deadpool's arms like a prize. Look at this little guy. Same hobbies as me. We're a perfect match. Deadpool gushed, cradling the pup on his shoulder as it nuzzled and licked his cheek. Hey, its tongue still smells like Peter. Amazing. Do you all feel the chemistry? And then Deadpool took off his mask and without a beat, stuck his tongue out and slobbered back at the dog. Everyone inhaled like they'd been slapped. The 3 Peters, calm Toby, dramatic Garfield, and flustered Holland, scrubbed their faces like lunatics. Gwen clapped at her chest and let out a shaky laugh of relief that she wasn't one of them. Deadpool, are all Deadpools like this? Tony asked, still half astonished. Holland yanked Tony back by the jacket. Mr. Stark, a minute ago I thought they were all the same, but now I'm sure they're only going to get worse. That explains why the werewolf said the Avengers don't want Deadpool around, Wolverine grunted. My Avengers wouldn't want this kind of guy either. Tony patted Holland's shoulder and, without missing a beat, lofted several suits of armor into the air. Don't worry, kid. No matter how many Deadpools show up, I'll keep them out. The Deadpool Corps were a few hundred meters away now. As they drew closer, their cheering, half singing, half chanting, drowned out the engines. Peter! My Peter! Peter-san! Ah, ah, ah! They rode like they'd been invited to the craziest cosplay rave imaginable, flailing limbs, headbanging, and a total lack of rhythm. It was like a cult of happy Cthulhu fans chasing Loki. Jarvis! Tony barked. Stop them. They all have healing factors. Do not hold back. Affirmative, sir. Several Mark 12 units fell into formation. The armors raised their palms. Repulsors glowed. Jarvis's voice broadcast through the armor speakers in that calm, irritatingly polite tone. Greetings, Deadpools. Please pursue your Peter in a rational manner. Cease this behavior immediately. You may only line up to hug Mr. Restaurant Parker after obtaining his consent. No, I don't want a hug. Mr. Jarvis, get them away from me, Holland screamed, clutching his head. Jarvis's tone stayed serene. Apologies, Mr. Deadpools. Mr. Parker refuses to hug you. Please disperse. It's the man's armor. It's his AI, one Deadpool shouted. Peter can't refuse us. Peter, are you being mind-controlled? Is Iron Man making you say this? Capture Iron Man alive. Rescue Peter. They stomped the throttles. Tires screeched, dust billowed, and the Deadpools bore down straight on Tony's defensive line. Warning, continued proximity will result in concentrated countermeasures, Jarvis intoned. Warning, 3, 2, 1 apologies, Mr. Deadpools. Every palm repulsor fired at once. Beams crisscrossed the field. Motorcycles exploded in showers of metal and rubber. Deadpool limbs went flying in the conflagration. After a few sweeping volleys, the Mark 12 units fell silent, hovering, waiting for the smoke and debris to clear. At the same time, Jarvis issued another warning. Deadpools, sirs and madams, please cease your improper behavior, or the attacks will continue. Exactly, exactly. Next time it won't stop. Garfield Spider whooped. Well done, Mr. AI. Mr. Parker, I am not an AI, but an intelligent life form, Jarvis corrected, swiveling the armor's head. You may call me Jarvis. He raised his hand again, aiming at the Deadpool Corps. Through the clearing smoke and dust, hazy figures pushed themselves upright. Legs and arms were broken, torsos scorched, but they kept lurching forward. Please stop, everyone, or I will attack again, Jarvis warned. It had no effect. More and more silhouettes climbed out of the debris and converged, staggering through the flying dust. They're really that persistent? They don't die? Don't they feel pain? Tony muttered, shocked. Deadpool, who stood next to him comparing tongue stamina with some Deadpool dog, chirped in, As a Deadpool, I'm scared of pain, but I can be brave for Peter. Oh God, shut up, tongue-kissing man. Every time you open your mouth, I feel like vomiting a week's worth of dinners, Tony snapped, his mouth twitching. Deadpool kept rambling about how much influence Tony had over the Avengers, but Tony didn't want to hear it. Jarvis, incapacitate them. Don't wait, Tony ordered. Yes, sir. Several armor palms began to charge, but 1 second before the energy beams fired, the Deadpool Corps emerged fully from the dust. Their shapes became distinct. Almost none of them were intact. Even the least injured female Deadpool had her right hand charred black from the explosion. If Jarvis attacked, they'd be reduced to a pile of mosaics. Then Tony noticed who stood at the front. A baby Deadpool sat shielded at the front, and beside him was a Deadpool in a Deadpool suit, no mask, handsome, sun-bright, long hair falling across one scorched leg that showed no healing. They were propped up by the other Deadpools like two living shields. Hi. The long-haired Deadpool smiled despite the burnt leg. I'm Deadpool, but everyone calls me Good Guy Deadpool. I'm here to find Peter and also my puppy. Have you seen her? Another baby Deadpool raised a hand in a defiant middle finger. The kid Deadpool holding him translated with a grin. Don't tell me you're going to beat up a baby, Iron Man. Jarvis looked back at Tony. Tony opened his mouth, closed it, then muttered, Is this actually happening? They've got no morals and they weaponize them. Sir, I advise against using force on a baby, even one with self-healing, Jarvis said. Additionally, the Deadpool being held next to baby Deadpool does not display regenerative abilities. It is also inadvisable to attack him. Tony bit his lip. Of course they'd use their own people as hostages, he said. Exasperated, he changed tactics. No energy weapons, Jarvis. Charge in with the armors, close and subdue them. Tony brought out a dozen more suits, re-equipped himself, and rose into the sky. Jarvis coordinated the armor legion and slammed into the howling Deadpool horde. The battlefield turned instantaneously chaotic. Blades flashed, metal met flesh, and battle cries echoed. The little spiders clapped and cheered from the sidelines. Leon opened his biofield and drifted up to record. B-15 breathed a secret sigh of relief that Deadpool hadn't been handed over to the TVA, though Sylvie's optimism about the main Deadpool still nagged her. The Iron Man tide and the endlessly regenerating Deadpool swarm fought ferociously, but neither side aimed to annihilate the other. The Deadpool's goal never changed. They just wanted to hug Peter. So as the battle rolled on, many Deadpools peeled off from fighting and made for the Peters. Tony glanced down and his stomach dropped. The three Peters who'd been cheering him moments ago were already swarmed. Deadpools screamed and cheered, chanting their names. Hands groped and yanked at faces. The Peters were being wrestled back and forth. One particularly perverted Deadpool even tried to shove a finger into Holland Spider's mouth. Wanda and Gwen stood frozen, eyes wide. Neither had seen something so gross and shocking. The main Deadpool who'd promised to keep things under control had defected. Seeing the pandemonium, he joined the pack, cheering as they circled the Peters. "Help! Help, Mr. Stark!" Holland Spider twisted and tried to dodge the female Deadpool's fingers. Tony's chest clenched. Something primitive and furious flashed across his mind. A vivid, sick déjà vu of his daughter being violated. He punched the armor thrusters, trying to cut through and pull the kid out. Deadpools lunged for him, grappling and pulling, but Tony brushed them aside with brute strength and blasted toward the Peters. Just as he was about to reach them, a figure stepped into his path. Ronin Deadpool. He held baby Deadpool in his left arm, and with his right hand he pressed a sword to the infant's neck. "Sorry, Stark-san," Ronin Deadpool said. "Don't come any closer, or this child's head goes clean off." Tony's eyes nearly popped. "Jesus, are you kidding me?" He fought, but the moral calculus tied his hands. He froze, enraged and helpless when he saw Leon filming from above. "Leon, stop watching and count and help," he shouted. Leon snapped his equipment closed with a pleased little sigh. "Watching? This is an excellent chance for you to show off your skills." "For once, seize the opportunity I'm giving you," Tony barked. Leon's figure flickered. He appeared beside Tony and with casual efficiency opened a portal dozens of kilometers away. Before Ronin Deadpool could react, Leon shoved Ronin and baby Deadpool together and sent them hurtling through the rift. Then Leon looked at the other Deadpools and his speed spiked. Everything around him slowed. The dust motes hung in the air, and he could see the lecherous expressions etched even through their masks. Leon walked among them as if through a frozen tableau, and one by one he tossed the immobilized perverts into the portal. The female Deadpool's fingers had pried open Holland Spider's mouth. Holland's despair was theatrical enough for Tolstoy. Leon laughed, and still chuckling, sent her through too. Each Deadpool had a different, grotesque way of behaving. Twisted postures, obscene gestures, none of them remotely sane. They piled up like refuse on the other side of the portal, a bizarre kind of harmony in the carnage. As if Deadpools were meant to be stacked and burned clean. Finally, Leon casually closed the portal, severing those hundreds of awful entanglements for the Peters. When he returned to normal speed, the three Peters, no longer surrounded, were still screaming for help, thrashing in the air like drowning men. They hit the ground, rolled, clutched themselves, and shouted until, slowly, they realized they'd escaped. They opened their eyes cautiously, looked around in confusion, and then asked, weakly, where the Deadpools had gone. Leon told them he had sent the Deadpool Corps away. The three immediately collapsed in relief, sprawling on the ground and staring up at the sky, still trembling from the trauma. "How can the multiverse be this terrifying?" Holland Spider managed. "I never want to leave my own universe again," Garfield Spider agreed. "But we've already joined the Time Variance Authority," Toby reminded them, and the three fell quiet. They glanced up at B-15. He shook his head before anyone could speak. Gentlemen, he said, once you join, you can't quit. I promise what happened was an accident. There aren't that many Deadpools in the multiverse. At that, the three Peters wailed again, collapsing into another dramatic heap on the floor. At the same time, two other voices were arguing nearby. Such a cute little thing should get to choose, Deadpool insisted in a rare moment of earnestness. I think she should pick her master herself. She's mine, Good Person Dog said, smiling brightly. I'm sorry, but please don't call her it. She's a girl. Earlier, while the Deadpool Corps were closing in on the Peters, the original Deadpool had been trying to take advantage of the chaos and claim Deadpool Dog. Good Person Dog had intervened, so Leon had deliberately spared him from the portal as well. Now the two of them were locked in a standoff over ownership. Deadpool kept insisting the dog should stay with him. Good Person Dog kept refusing. Good Person Dog's kindness came with unshakable boundaries. He was determined to reclaim Deadpool Dog. Deadpool, though used to backing off when refused, was stubborn this time. Deadpool Dog looked exactly like him in canine form. To Deadpool, that was fate. Look at her. Her looks, come on. She's practically me. Let her choose, Deadpool said, holding up Deadpool Dog, who was busily licking his cheek. Good Person Dog's smile didn't waver. Sorry, she's my dog. Fuck, Deadpool cursed. I hate these damn Deadpools, especially the one without a mask. He scowled, weighing whether to take care of Good Person Dog by force. Then he saw Leon and his eyes brightened. Wait a second, my lovely Mary Poppins, he cooed, holding the ugly little dog up. He leaned toward her and whispered, I'm going to deal with that fake smiling waiter next to me right now. He set Deadpool Dog down and trotted over to Leon's side. Leon! Leon! He called, unusually using Leon's name. Quick, give me that move from your Hogwarts. What move? The one that turned me into a dog, Veriverto, like Moody turning Malfoy into a ferret. You sure? This is the most important request of my life, Leon. All right, Veriverto. A spike of magic hit Deadpool. He shrank and reshaped until he was an ugly little dog, almost carved from the same mold as Deadpool Dog. Dog Deadpool yelped with joy, wagged his stubby tail, and ran straight to Deadpool Dog. The two sniffed and licked each other in surprise, then took off together, noses side by side. After a few laps, they were indistinguishable. Who was the original, who the mimic? Exactly the confusion Deadpool wanted. Leon watched and smiled as it dawned on him what Deadpool was trying to do. When two dogs walk side by side, how could you possibly tell which is the real Deadpool, he thought. After circling, the dog stopped. One stepped toward Good Person Dog, barked a few times, then turned and wiggled its rear in a blatant taunt, as if to say, Can you tell which of us is yours? If you can't, she's mine. Good Person Dog froze. The smile that always sat on his face faltered for a beat. He looked, briefly, like he was questioning the world. Then he blinked, hesitated, and made a decision. With an oddly forced grin, he said, Can you turn me into a puppy too? Brilliant. He intended to fight Deadpool on his own terms. Leon set his hand and raised the spell again. Veriverto. Good Person Dog spun once and became a puppy as well. But he was not like the other two. Fluffy, golden, every hair gleaming, with big, dark, intelligent eyes and a faint, calm smile. He was the canine equivalent of Ryan Reynolds, handsome, radiant, and thoroughly wholesome. As soon as he transformed, he bounded toward the other pups, eager to prove himself. The contrast was immediate. The three puppies looked nothing like they belonged to the same world. Deadpool Dog and Dog Deadpool were ungainly, ridiculous. Deadpool's chaos rendered canine. Good Person Dog was beautiful and composed. When he tried to engage, Deadpool Dog slipped aside and hid behind his original, human-shaped Deadpool, eyes wide and a little sheepish. Chapter 265. Chapter story temporarily ended. Good Person Dog chased a few more times, then tilted his head and stopped, clearly baffled. Leon casually conjured a mirror with a flick of magic and held it up. Good Person Dog saw a beautiful puppy looking back at him. Then he turned and looked at the other two, scruffy dogs, and felt his expression fall. He realized, with a sinking feeling, that Deadpool Dog really was a match for the other Deadpool. It was as if something fragile had snapped in the air. The smile on Good Person Dog's face warped into a strained, embarrassed grin. Woof, woof! He took a few tentative steps toward Deadpool Dog, trying one last time to win back this little beauty. Deadpool Dog, however, simply turned his head and resumed licking the original Deadpool. The main Deadpool waved a paw at Good Person Dog, as if to say, "This isn't our circle. Don't push it." Good Person Dog, his fake grin collapsing, slunk away from the group. His silhouette slowly faded into the wilderness. The heartless pair of Deadpools continued their endless licking. "He looks like a dog," Leon murmured. "What are you going on about? He is a dog now, and you're the one who turned him into one," Tony said, coming up beside Leon. He still supported Holland Spider with one arm. Holland Spider gave Leon a thumbs up. "Thanks, Leon. If you hadn't sent the Deadpool core away, I think today would have been the end of Spider-Man." "Nice work," Garfield Spider added as he joined them. "Would have been even better if you'd made those Deadpool's dogs earlier." "If they had been dogs, wouldn't they all just lick you?" Leon said. Garfield Spider shuddered. "On second thought, never mind. Being licked by a swarm of Deadpools? I'd rather not." B-15 walked up and glanced at the two ridiculous, gleefully bald dogs. "Gentlemen, perhaps it's time we return to the Time Variance Authority." She manipulated the time pad and opened a temporal gate. The two little Deadpool dogs were the first to hop and skip inside. Toby Spider's fingers trembled. I have to ask, ma'am, when the Deadpool core showed up earlier, couldn't you have just taken us away like this?" B-15 stepped into the gate and said, "They're lunatics. If we don't let lunatics be lunatics sometimes, who knows what mess they'll cause. Sorry, we could only let you suffer a little while." Toby Spider went pale, as if the world had split halfway through him. B-15 turned back and added, "Everyone's injuries this time are considered work-related. The Time Variance Authority will compensate you for any emotional distress." "Oh, compensation?" poor Peter Parker croaked. "Like what?" someone else asked. B-15 considered Peter for a moment and then said, "How about an after-tax payout, usable in your own worlds, equal to 3 times your annual income?" "Oh my God, are you serious?" Toby Spider blurted. "Of course," Peter said. "Madam, I think the Time Variance Authority is the best agency I've ever encountered," another chimed. They all returned to the TVA. B-15 gave them a proper tour this time. Tony wandered through in something close to reverent wonder. His sense of justice reawakened. Naturally, B-15 had no plans to recruit him. When the visit ended, everyone said their goodbyes. Thanks to Leon's earlier modifications to the time pad, the Time Variance Authority successfully locked onto individual worlds within the Spider-Verse. The younger spiders who had joined the excursion each received a time pad. From now on, they could travel freely between parallel worlds, though they'd still need to undergo some training at the TVA. After farewells, they opened their respective worlds' temporal gates and departed, each carrying a jumble of feelings. Holland Spider returned to his small apartment, leaned against the wall, stared at the ceiling, and smiled thinking of the other Tony. Garfield Spider went back to his workshop, replaying the trip in his head. He suspected Deadpool core images would haunt his dreams tonight. Toby Spider came home to Mary Jane's astonished questions about why he smelled strange, then proudly produced the 3 years' income the TVA had issued. They hugged each other like fools. Gwen returned to a lonelier room. In her world, she had few friends who truly understood her. She sat on the edge of her bed, kicked her drum kit, and already missed everyone who had left. Penny Parker, Spider-Ham, the Peters, Wanda, and probably that strange Superman-like mage named Leon. Wanda had already invited her over. At first, the girls had been uneasy about talking, but after watching the Deadpool core wreak havoc together, they'd bonded over shared disgust and formed a quick friendship. On the other side, Leon and his 2 companions returned to the 199999S universe. Little Peter and Aunt Mai were already home. Presumably, the terror of nearly losing little Peter would keep Aunt Mai on edge for an entire year. Little Peter, for his part, was brimming with excitement. Having met so many Spider-Men, he could not wait for the day he'd be bitten. He'd even started feeding spider pets to hurry things along. Natasha and Shirley had waited in the living room. After Leon told them about the parallel universe trip, the 3 girls could hardly contain their amazement. Tony, however, was displeased. "What is this Time Destruction Bureau nonsense?" he grumbled. "They kept those 2 bald dogs and werewolf Lupin instead of inviting me in. Are they planning something shady and don't want me finding out?" he added. Leon spread his hands. B-15 only showed us 2 floors. By the time we turned around, the employees had already found over 70 listening devices. You acted like you were selling spy gadgets and then started clearing them out on the spot, Tony muttered, cheek twitching. I just thought spies had infiltrated them, like S.H.I.E.L.D., so I enthusiastically helped investigate. In any case, they left a Jarvis subunit on their systems to assist with oversight, which is reassuring, Leon said, accepting the coffee Natasha handed him. Jarvis's voice ran through the room. Yes, sir. The Time Variance Authority will add my subunit to their supervision network. After that, we need only build a cross-temporal communication device, and I'll be able to receive their information in real time. That sounds pretty good, Tony said. So when do we build the cross-temporal communication device? The TimePad B-15 gave young Master Leon can do that, Jarvis replied. Tony looked at Leon expectantly. Leon hesitated, then shook his head. I'm not comfortable handing you a TimePad. I always feel like you'll cause trouble. Jarvis can connect to the TVA network through me. No way, Leon. You don't trust a reliable brother like me? Tony protested. Ask Wanda, Leon said, glancing at her. Wanda, do you think Tony's reliable? Wanda shook her head. See? No need to say more. All right then, Tony said with a mock sigh. Wanda, I'll take you home. Night settled in, and for now the Multiverse's chapter closed. The story had paused, temporarily ended, leaving a network of new connections, unresolved curiosities, and a handful of children more eager than ever for spiders, strange mages, and adventures yet to come. Chapter 1. Month later. Unlike the trip where he'd gone mad after running into Deadpool in a parallel universe, Li Ang's life had returned to its peaceful routine after coming back to Earth. Every day, his Superman-bodied main self would bask in the sun on the balcony. The Blood Sea clone busied itself in the inner world, studying the rules of the universes. The Black Light clone, having absorbed the mutant blood Wanda had gathered, returned to the Voidland. Even though the clones existed across different universes, Li Ang's consciousness remained unified, with real-time cross-communication between all 3 perspectives. In the Voidland, the Black Light clone, Haiguang Li Ang, had again taken the form of a Siberian husky and spent his days at Elios's side, waiting for lucky worlds to collapse into the void. The multiverse contained countless parallel worlds. Almost every day, some world met its apocalypse and was destroyed. Over the past month, Liang's home Earth had moved into mid-December, and New York was covered in silver after days of snow. Meanwhile, the Black Light clone and Elios had devoured more than 50 worlds. Some were ruined when their anchor people died, some faded from energy depletion, some had been torn apart by Thanos. With so many worlds, there were always a few that followed unusual paths to destruction. Whenever a world's remnants fell into the void, Elios rushed forward with mouth wide open to gobble them up, while Liang snatched whatever biological genes had been preserved. There wasn't much usable tissue in most of the debris. The majority of the fallen material was planetary fragments. Occasionally, a survivor clung to a shard. Once Liang even found a surviving Atom Warlock, the movie universe version, mentally limited but genetically perfect for that universe. He at first warned Elios that he was powerful, but he was quickly chased, crying for his mother, and then swallowed in one gulp. After the Black Light clone absorbed his blood, its gene level jumped to 35 times. Apart from that atom, the strongest survivors they found were only around Quicksilver's level, numerous but mediocre. When he wasn't waiting with Elios, Haiguang Liang liked to wander the void. Elios ate fast, but he couldn't catch everything, and many survivors hid scattered throughout the emptiness. Some time earlier, Liang had come across a pack of Lokis fighting over the corpse of Thor. He robbed them all, flattening them into the void, and they kept introducing themselves as Asgard's god of mischief, until Liang told them Asgard had long been destroyed. After that, they fell quiet. Later, when he was bored, he'd play tricks on the Lokis just for fun. After more than a month of scavenging, the Black Light clone's genetic level had advanced to 80-fold. Liang's understanding of the essence of life and genes deepened as well, but he was still far from being able to rewrite and strengthen his main body's genes. He planned to wait until the Black Light clone was stronger, then ingest his main body's blood, analyze its genes, and figure out the directions for modification. Once he had that roadmap, the work of enhancement would become far simpler. Everything had a plan. He just needed a little more time. A few days ago, Old Wang had messaged him. The new Magic Academy was finished and wanted Liang to inspect it today. Liang, why are you still sunbathing? A clear, lively female voice called from behind him. Liang turned. Gwen stepped out of a time portal in casual clothes, waving. Didn't Wanda say you had something to do today and couldn't go shopping with us? She asked, curious. I'm leaving now. I really don't have time to go shopping, Liang said, a dark line creasing his forehead. Also, if you want to see Wanda, why don't you go to her directly? Why do you always come to my apartment first? This isn't a transfer station. After a week apart at the TVA, the little spiders had begun their TVA training, mainly learning taboos for timeline travel and mission procedures. After training, Holland's spiders started dropping by Tony's from time to time. The TVA had begun assigning them to capture villains. Their first mission was to help Wolverine fix his past. Deadpool joined too, this time in the form of a small dog. While they held the line with Wolverine, Deadpool barked encouragement from the side. After they barely repelled the enemy, Deadpool wiggled his doggy rear at them in celebration. Fortunately, the mission succeeded. The X-Men survived, and Wolverine was able to correct his tragedy. Even though it only changed a parallel world, Wolverine was satisfied. He said he could die there with a smile on his face. Holland Spider was deeply moved when he talked about it, eyes reddening as he spoke. Tony stepped forward and patted his shoulder. Holland Spider was probably lonely in his own world, so whenever something interesting happened, he wanted to come and share it with Tony. Tony was happy to listen. When Gwen saw Holland Spider coming by so often, she started coming along too, because she wanted to see her friend Wanda. The problem was that Gwen's time pad kept malfunctioning, and the portal always opened at Liang's apartment. The first time had been an accident. After that, it became routine. Wanda's place wasn't far anyway, so the downstairs of Liang's building turned into their meeting spot. Sometimes when they went shopping, they dragged Liang and the Natasha sisters along. If Liang protested, they'd turn on coquettish tricks they'd apparently picked up somewhere. Those awkward moves were unbearable to watch and often made even Liang feel powerless despite his steel body. Next time, don't open the time portal here, Liang called as Gwen bounced out the door. I can't help it. My time pad's just a little weird and uncontrollable, Gwen said, her skirt swaying. She paused in the doorway, then turned back. Oh, by the way, latest news. Logan went with Deadpool to Deadpool's Universe 1005 to try to save that world. B-15 said they did something big 2 days ago, and then Deadpool's universe stopped collapsing because Deadpool became the anchor person. Deadpool? He became an anchor person? Liang raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? That sounds more like his universe is about to end. Gwen winked. That's why it's big news. I'm going to tell Wanda now. Chapter 11. Changes in the Small World. After Gwen left, Revered Lion stood and frowned. I can't reconcile the name Deadpool with the anchor person, no matter how I think about it. What incredible things must he and Wolverine have done? Could they have had a wolf cub together? Someone muttered. With Deadpool, even the most outrageous ideas sometimes seemed plausible. I'll ask B-15 for details when I get the chance. Revered Lion glanced up at the sky. It's about time. I should go to Camartage. He opened a portal with a casual gesture and stepped through. He emerged deep inside the Camartage library. The scene inside was familiar, a wooden house at the center containing a small world. Around that house, in addition to the fixed portals leading to the 3 sanctums, there was one more portal he hadn't seen before. He pushed the little door open and was immediately met by sunlight and the scent of damp earth. A long breeze rippled across the green grass. Revered Lion closed the door behind him. The small world was now connected to the earth dimension. The sunlight falling here matched the light outside Camartage at that very moment. In a few hours, moonlight would blanket the land. He rose slowly and took in the world from above. Laid out beneath him were glacial plains to the north, lava wastelands to the south, plateau mountains to the west, and basin forests to the east. Magical creatures were everywhere, bowtruckles hunting insects in the wood, herds of orumpents drinking by rivers in the wasteland, water horses swimming under a lake's surface, phoenixes soaring above the plateau. The small world had become a vibrant, self-sustaining ecosystem. Almost every kind of magical creature could be seen, and their numbers were large enough that even phoenixes and keelans appeared in groups. Though by Harry Potter world standards, some of them weren't conventionally beautiful. Mordo and the others did an excellent job, revered Lion said, heading for the floating island at the world's center. Sorcerers on broomsticks waved to him as he passed, and the sight made him sigh. Kamartaj was looking more and more like Hogwarts. The floating island came into focus. The academy buildings, overseen by Master Wong, were now unmistakable. When he had first examined the edge of the small world a month ago, he deliberately avoided coming close so he could survey things properly from a distance. Up close, the island had been transformed completely. It was no longer the bare, inverted mountain peak he remembered. The sorcerers had reworked it from top to bottom. They had carved a river, 500 meters wide, right through the island, using magic to make it flow. One end cascaded down into the lake below like a waterfall, an inverted Milky Way of water. The other end drew water up from the lake back into the island as the river's source. The inflow and outflow formed a perfect water cycle between the floating island and the lake, like two columns of flowing water supporting the massive inverted mountain. On the island, the river split the ground in two. Academy buildings lined both banks. To the left rose Oriental temples and palaces. To the right stood Western palaces and halls in Gothic, Baroque, and Rococo styles. Ornate wooden beams and painted rafters faced glazed jade and gilded facades. In the center, straddling the river, stood a tower-like structure 1,000 meters tall, part tower, part bridge, with the wide river rushing beneath its span. Through the tall windows of the tower's ground-floor hall, revered Lion could see a fixed portal inlaid in the floor. The new portal in the Kamartaj Library connected here. In front of the tower floated a huge circular marble platform 1,000 meters in diameter, its surface paved with square stone tiles. There was no visible path to the platform. Access required a nightmare carriage or individual magical ability. Many sorcerers walked the platform now, Tony, Wong, and Banner among them. Master Wong's work is impressive, revered Lion murmured as he descended to the marble surface. The sorcerers present gathered and gave him the sorcerer's salute. Revered Lion, you're finally here. How does it look? Our civil engineering team did a wonderful job on the new academy, Wong crowed, clearly seeking praise. Mordo stood beside him, beaming. And our animal team, the magical creature breeding program, has been a huge success. I saw everything. You all did great. Better than I expected, revered Lion said. He gestured toward the buildings. If I'm not mistaken, the eastern buildings teach Kamartaj-style magic, and the western complex teaches Hogwarts-style magic. Exactly, Wong replied. We thought separate houses would be better, easier for teaching, and it lets apprentices compete. Good thinking, Wong. Keep it up. Revered Lion turned to Mordo. But what about the magical creatures? I understand you managed to release them successfully, but why did their numbers swell so much? Phoenixes and Cheelans in groups. How did you do that? Mordo straightened. Actually, it was Sorcerer Tony who... It was me, Tony jumped in. I used cloning technology to recreate original bodies from the magical creature materials we brought back from Hogwarts. When I saw Banner and the others worried, I figured it wasn't that hard. He looked for credit from Revered Lion. See? Maybe you're not as clever as your big brother. Revered Lion narrowed his eyes. Cloning? Did you use the tech from the biohazard world? That version wasn't stable, Tony admitted, but I've improved it. I guarantee the clones won't suffer genetic collapse. If you don't believe me, ask Mordo, Tony said. With the materials from so many cloned magical creatures, we've even improved the magic potion. Mordo nodded. That's right, Revered Lion. With materials from numerous rare creatures, phoenixes, fire dragons, and the like, Tony has refined the potion. The side effects are now nearly non-existent. Last week, we began rolling out the new potion to the sorcerers here in the Holy Land. Even those who had undergone physical mutations from the old formula can now return to their original forms. His expression darkened. However, he added, some sorcerers want to keep the traits their mutations gave them and are unwilling to take the new potion. Chapter 268, Qualifiers. There truly were all sorts of people among the mages of Kamartaj, and Lyon had long since stopped being surprised. Then let them be, he said. Who nowadays would call themselves a mage without some eccentricity? He didn't mind. When the academy starts recruiting, we can even parade that diversity. At the mention of the academy, Wang's face lit up. Recruiting? When do we start? His excitement was nearly visible. Lyon studied him for a moment. Have you lost weight? He asked. Wang, once plump, looked noticeably slimmer, probably burnt out from work. Ever since he'd come back from Hogwarts, Wang had been obsessed with setting up Kamartaj's own school. For the last 2 months, he'd been leading mages who'd worked in civil engineering, working day and night to finish construction, get approvals, and open as quickly as possible. The name was already chosen, the Supreme Mage Academy. The main buildings at both branches bore plaques and stone carvings with the academy's name. The gilded lettering seemed to shift through different languages, giving the whole thing an appropriately magical air. Wang rolled up his sleeves to reveal firmer arms. I haven't lost weight. I'm stronger. He hastily added, why would recruitment not be urgent? If we don't recruit, who will the academy teach? Wang, think it through, Lyon replied. Before recruiting, you have to define the recruitment methods, the academy system, the faculty, the curriculum, and where students end up after graduation. Lyon gave him a second-stage task. Write a proposal covering those things first, then we can move on. And don't forget, Wang piped up, before the academy opens, we have one more big event, the challenge against Asgard. Lyon glanced around the circular platform. This preliminary arena you built is pretty good. You've been doing construction every day, Lyon teased. Don't tell me you won't be able to compete in the final match against Asgard. The preliminary competition was a trial within the sanctuary to pick the participants for the Kamartaj versus Asgard challenge. It was already mid-December, 9 days until Christmas, the agreed date for the showdown. Lyon thought the whole affair was mostly to needle Thor and Loki, so he wasn't taking it too seriously. Mordo, Hamir, and the other archmages, however, had been preparing earnestly for months. Since October, they'd been asking Lyon who would be on the final roster, trying to feel out whether they themselves would be included. Others checked in from time to time, so Lyon decided to hold the preliminary competition. Registration had opened a week earlier. Jarvis grouped registrants using big data analysis of their skill levels and divided everyone into 5 pools. The format was a 2-stage knockout. The first round was a free-for-all. In each pool, the 5 mages who defeated the most opponents within a time limit would advance. The second round was one-on-one. The 25 who made it through the first round would draw opponents at random. From those matches, 5 competitors and 2 reserves would be chosen. The venue was the circular platform they now stood on, Wang's own hurried construction. Lyon suspected Wang had poured so much time into building it that his strength might have slipped, but Wang was confident. I trained my magic while building the academy. My control curse is perfected now, and my petrification and deformation curses are much better. Planning to make Hogwarts spells your main offense? Lyon raised an eyebrow. They do work wonders on people. Speaking of which, where's Banner? Is he not coming? Is he skipping the prelims? The preliminary competition started the next day. On the platform, a couple hundred mages practiced spells or sparred. When Lyon arrived, Tony was even sparring with Mordo, wand in hand. Among the mages, Tony and Banner were basically foreign aid Lyon had invited. They'd both insisted they weren't just visitors, but mages of Kamartaj, and planned to use only magic in the first round. Both were confident, but they were still new to magic. With their time at Hogwarts included, they'd studied less than a year. Even Tony, arrogant as he was, had come for last-minute practice. Banner, quiet and earnest, ought to have been living here and practicing constantly. Lyon didn't see him. Instead, he spotted Betty Ross practicing an Expelliarmus among the crowd. Mordo explained, Banner went to reinforce his suitcase. Because he's appearing as a beastmaster, he needs to carry his fantastic beasts. He had to reinforce it because the expansion charm on the suitcase showed signs of fading. Lyon rubbed his chin. So he really plans to fight as a beastmaster? He's practiced soul magic so well, he's not going to use that? Banner had been at Kamar Taj for almost 4 months and could already control star projection magic skillfully. He couldn't make the Hulk's soul fully leave his body yet, but he'd learned to influence the Hulk, awakening him quickly or lulling him back to sleep. In effect, Banner had found the on-off switch for the transformation. Lion had also heard, rumor more than confirmation, that Banner still couldn't handle certain intimate situations with his girlfriend because the Hulk reacted too strongly. Those moments were so intense that even Banner's soul magic couldn't calm the Hulk. That frustration had pushed Banner to study soul magic obsessively. He wanted to be able to simply slap the Hulk's soul aside if he had to. Mordo smiled knowingly. Maybe Banner's soul magic is meant to be used only at the most critical moment. Tony, who could gossip like an old neighbor, leaned in. Want to bet when he'll manage that critical moment? Lion glanced at him. You should go home more often. Peppers complained you hide away and don't come home, especially at night. Tony's face went awkward. I'm preparing for the challenge. This is interplanetary diplomacy. It's normal to be away a few nights. I'm building armor in the lab. Right. Pepper even asked me to ask you if you're, well, still up to the job, Lion said dryly. Who's not up to the job? Tony snapped, flustered. Tell her I'm busy with work, not tell her yourself. Lion conjured a portal and sent Tony straight to Pepper's office. Lion walked among the others, pointing out flaws in their casting and offering pointers. The circle buzzed with practice and nervous energy as everyone tried to sharpen themselves for tomorrow's trials. Chapter 269, Magic Collision. The next morning, exactly 9 o'clock Kathmandu time, all the sorcerers who had signed up for the competition had already gathered on the floating circular platform. Banner stood with his briefcase and his girlfriend Betty. Tony, pale, stood beside them, staring at Leon in the air with a fierce look. Wanda and Pietro were there too. They all stood among the sorcerers, facing Leon. I won't say much, Leon said. The purpose of this preliminary round is to select the sorcerers who will advance to the challenge. Now, let's begin the match groupings and venue allocation. He tossed a spherical projection device into the center of the platform. 5 illusory light walls shot out from its slits, dividing the platform into 5 equal sectors. Huge projections rose over each area, each listing over 100 participants. After every name were 3 stats: victories, defeats, and assisted defeats. More than 800 people had signed up for this preliminary round. Leon had given each contestant 3 lives. Severe injury, being knocked unconscious, or leaving the boundary would each count as losing 1 life. Defeated sorcerers could be healed by Leon and returned to the field. They had 3 chances in total. Now, all sorcerers, according to the groupings on the 5 lists, find your combat area, Leon instructed. Final selection for each group will be determined by your performance in the free-for-all. You have 10 minutes to prepare. The first round is limited to 1 hour. You may begin preparations now. A 10-minute countdown lit up on the 5 giant projection screens. Sorcerers hurried to find their names and entered their designated battlefields. Banner, look, I'm in the same area as you. We can team up. Wong pointed excitedly at projection screen number 2. Banner scratched his head. Isn't teaming up a little unfair? He said. Maybe, Wong shrugged, but everyone else is doing it. Groups of familiar sorcerers had already gathered in each sector, not to backstab each other, but to coordinate against opponents. Jarvis had tried to separate likely team-ups when dividing the groups, but Kamar Taj was only so big. Everyone still knew a dozen or so other sorcerers. Jarvis had even suggested alternative competition formats to Leon, but Leon already knew who the final combatants would be. This preliminary round was mainly an opportunity for Tony and the others to show their strength to the community, so the exact format didn't matter much. All right, let's team up, Banner said, and he and Wong walked into Combat Zone 2 together. Wanda, Pietro, Tony, and Mordo had all been assigned to separate zones. The 10 minutes passed quickly. All the sorcerers stood ready in their sectors, their 0-0 combat records projected above their heads. When the countdown on all 5 screens flipped to a red go, the matches began. Sometimes battles between sorcerers were very simple. As soon as the match began, nearly half the sorcerers simultaneously used Hogwarts-style spells: Stupefy, Petrificus Totalis, Levicorpus, Lumos, Colorful beams flew across the fields like a pack of Jedi wildly throwing lightsabers, and they found targets. Many of the other sorcerers hadn't mastered wand-based spells. At the start, some were still forming hand seals to summon Vishanti's holy sword, others were trying to conjure crimson mystic bands, and a few were launching themselves on enchanted shoes. They became living targets. The initial wave of beams took many of them down instantly. Only a few cautious sorcerers immediately conjured the rings of Ragador or raised a seraphim shield and managed to block that first barrage. After Leon resurrected the defeated sorcerers, their records changed to 010 above their heads. Now more careful, one hand conjured the rings of Ragador to defend while the other cast energy whips or swords. Only then did both sides truly engage in back-and-forth combat. And both sides wasn't entirely accurate, because the sorcerers using Hogwarts-style magic, by unspoken agreement, prioritized eliminating those muggles who couldn't use wand magic. Tony was the most outrageous of them. Dressed in a long sorcerer's robe, his mouth worked like an accelerator as he unleashed a rapid-fire torrent of spells. He threw up a Protego in 0.4 seconds, and then began to output without stopping. Stupefy. Immobilize, Impedimenta, Calla Portis, Confringo, Sectum Sempra, Levicorpus, Incendio, Hair-Growing Charm, Antler Charm. He used anything that came to mind, control spells, combat magic, prank spells, even deformation curses, hitting whoever he saw. With a casting pace that felt like 3 spells per second, most opponents simply could not keep up. He strode forward almost leisurely, his mouth moving so fast it blurred, his wand nearly smoking from spitting out beams of light, and yet he looked impossibly elegant. In just a few minutes, Tony's record above his head read 2103. Banner and Wong's teamwork went smoothly as well. Wong cast a massive seraphim shield at the start of the match, while Banner, sheltered behind the barrier, opened his briefcase and released a parade of companions. Erumpents, Thunderbirds, Graphorns, Azuwu, Hippogriffs, more than a dozen large magical creatures charged the unprepared sorcerers. Thunderbirds summoned lightning from the sky, Erumpents gored and tossed enemies into the air with poisonous horns, and Graphorns could make a head buzz with a single roar. Banner and Wong followed the creatures, stepping in to reinforce with spells whenever a sorcerer looked in trouble. Their battlefield was almost more relaxed than Tony's. As long as they didn't give opponents opportunities to counter, like creating a mirror dimension, Banner and Wong could essentially win the match lying down. Elsewhere, the combat zones with Wanda and Pietro were also one-sided. Wanda floated above the fray, weaving camartage magic into scarlet chains. More than 100 cords filled the sky, snaking down to bind the mages below. The match had barely started, and every mage in Wanda's section was entangled, turned into writhing bundles of crimson. 2 minutes later, Jarvis declared those who couldn't break free dead. The battle record over Wanda's head shifted to 173-0. That alone was enough to guarantee her a spot in the next round. No one in the other sections could outdo that. She released the spell, drifted to the ground, and moved to a corner, leaving the stage free for the others. The scarlet chains dissolved into the air behind her. The mages who had inexplicably been killed stared at her back as if at a legend, their will to fight drained. In Section 3, Pietro finished even faster. He held the magical dagger Old Wang had given him months ago. When the round began, he darted forward, a blur weaving through the mass of competitors. Before most of them had time to react, Jarvis had already recorded them as dead. Pietro returned to his spot, whistling, the dagger flipping between his fingers. His record read 169-0. Done, he said, a cool half-smile on his face. Mordo's showing was the most chaotic. Assigned to Section 5, the Archmage had plenty of would-be allies, yet as always, Mordo's temperament refused favors. He scornfully rejected every invitation and lectured those who suggested teaming up. The whole point was to pick the best mages for the challenge, he spat. Winning with alliances would embarrass them in Asgard. Ashamed, the rejected mages silently swallowed their pride and then, together, turned on him. By the time the match started, Mordo was ringed by a tight circle of competitors. Even calm Mordo felt sweat bead at his temples. Fortunately, his power and showmanship held. When the rest period countdown ended, he slammed his staff down and unleashed a supercharged Lumos Maxima. A blinding searchlight flooded Section 5, its glare spilling into adjacent Sections 1 and 4. Several mages mid-cast were blinded, their hands slipping. Stray spells hit allies and harmless bystanders alike. Dozens of attackers covering Mordo were rendered sightless, blindly flailing and firing spells that exploded like misfired fireworks across the area. Before Mordo felt a scratch, the opposing alliance had already taken heavy losses. He tucked his staff into his belt, shaped intricate seals, slapped his palm to the ground, and ripped open a mirror dimension. He snatched a few crucial assists just as a dozen mages went down. He tried to shift space to take out the rest of the dozen or so who had ganged up on him, but the competitors weren't helpless. Many of them had mirror dimension knowledge themselves. Sensing the spatial change, they fought to wrest control from Mordo. In the end, he only killed a little over 20 mages who reacted too slowly. It was a strong start, but the siege that followed was brutal, a showcase of martial skill, magical prowess, and tactical cunning. Mordo's final tally when the melee countdown ended, 31-3, 56, told how vicious the hour had been. He'd provoked infighting, talked his way into breaking the alliance apart, but the cost to his own wits and reserves had been high. The 1-hour melee closed. In a normal skirmish with dimensional beasts, that span would be barely notable, but by now most participants had died at least once. Jarvis triggered the end of competition prompt, and the projection walls folded back. The 5 floating projection screens merged. More than 800 mage entries blinked out. Only 25 names remained. Above each of those combatants, the battle records ignited into giant golden placards, like enormous light bulbs hovering over their heads. At the top of the list were, unsurprisingly, Wanda and Pietro. Each had wiped out every mage in their section in a single round, clean, overwhelming victories. Next stood Hulk's score, 236-0-61. It had been Bruce Banner, at first, quietly scavenging scraps behind the magical beasts with Old Wang. They were guiding creatures to safety and gathering what they could, but when the competitors began to respawn and press forward, the animals couldn't distract them all. A mage, using Vishanti's sacred sword, sliced a Graphorn's front leg. That Graphorn was Hulk's mount, his favored companion. Seeing it bleeding triggered something deep and violent in Banner. He felt his blood heat, his heart pounding. He shouted for the attackers to stop, to pull back the beasts, but before he could finish his warning, his shirt ripped and the green colossus emerged. Hulk first hauled the Graphorn to a safe corner, then turned with a grim, almost delighted grin and tore into the crowd. The rest was predictable carnage. Even Old Wang had been killed 3 times in the chaos. When the round concluded, Banner, shirtless, hunched, clutching his chest, lowered his head under the horrified stares of everyone around him. He had no control. He could only watch Hulk rampage while his mind remained a helpless passenger. It was a cruel curse, one Banner bore with a mixture of embarrassment and resignation. Leon had been close enough to provide immediate healing if needed, which helped, but it didn't change how hollow Banner felt. That was incredible, Banner. Tony strode over, his record at 89-1-1-32. He jabbed a finger at Banner's waist. Where's the big guy? Aren't you going to let him take a bow? He was awesome. This basically guarantees you a win in the challenge. Banner jumped at the poke and let out an awkward laugh. If I could, I'd prefer we'd won with the magical creatures, he muttered. Tony spread his hands. Why does it have to be the creatures? Isn't Hulk part of your strength? Banner shook his head. This is different. Tony, is that a wound on your face? Tony had a bandage on his left cheek. You mean this? He casually tore it off. The cut was already healed. Got grazed by an energy sword from a sorcerer, he complained. Just a graze like that, and Lion and Jarvis pronounced me dead and slapped a bandage on me. This competition is so unfair. It means they care about you. Or maybe since other sorcerers don't have super self-healing, it's more reasonable to eliminate you outright? Banner tried to smooth things over. Reasonable? Tony shot back, shutting him down. Banner scratched his cheek, finding it oddly sensible. So you're saying they do care about you then? What? I would never say that. Tony's gaze drifted as Lion flew back to the center of the platform. Look, Lion's probably going to announce the results. Everyone's attention snapped to Lion. Conversations died away. The first round of preliminaries is over. 25 sorcerers advanced to the second round. The list is as follows. After he finished reading the names, Leon waved and sent all the sorcerers to the edge of the platform. Projection runes hummed to life again, dividing the central venue into 12 arenas. Next, we begin the second round, one-on-one round-robin battles. All advanced sorcerers, please come forward to draw lots. Others may stay and watch, or leave early. No one left. Everyone clustered around the arenas to watch. The most uneventful matches were probably Wanda's. Almost every opponent surrendered. Even stubborn Tony, after witnessing the exchange between Wanda and Cassandra, had little confidence in beating her. But Tony was willful. When he drew Wanda for his third round-robin match, he walked up in full armor. Wanda's power turned his vibranium suit into bread. Tony climbed down, eating it. Unbelievable, he said. Her ability could solve the entire universe's food crisis, I guarantee it. He broke off a piece and offered it to Banner. Let me try. Banner bit in. Pretty good, tastes like strawberries. Did she model it on some bread she'd eaten? It wasn't just strawberry. My helmet turned into a cream puff, my repulsors into donuts. Tony chewed with a straight face, then held the loaf out. Anyone want some bread? Me. Let me try. Vishanti, is this the legendary Midas touch magic? A crowd of sorcerers gathered around Tony, and within minutes they'd eaten the entire bread armor. Tony wiped cream from his mouth, switched into a fresh suit, then used the armor's liquid circulation and air dry functions to take a shower inside it. The competition rolled on. The most exciting bout came later, Tony versus Hulk. After the draw, Tony specifically instructed Banner to release Hulk, and he himself donned the vibranium armor. Hulk still remembered the time Tony had mercilessly poked his head with the fungus god armor's fingers in the streets of New York a few months earlier. Tony remembered, too. He hadn't regained his dignity from that encounter. Without saying a word, both of them went all out. Their fist-to-fist clash had the crowd on its feet. It looked like the highest form of sorcery. Just look at that beautiful left hook. The fight ended with Tony's rocket-boosted left hook. Hulk took it square on the chin, flew out of the arena, and landed unconscious. Tony's left-hand armor had been smashed, and as the nanomaterials reformed, they revealed his left hand, bloodied but healing rapidly under the armor. This time, you don't get to roar at me again, big guy, Tony said, raising an eyebrow at Banner, now returned to his normal size. A punch accelerated by a starship thruster isn't easy to take. Even Lion, who'd only recently returned to Earth in June, would have been knocked off his feet by that blow. Tony was certain of it. The competition ran through the afternoon. When the final match between Mordo and Grandmaster Daniel ended, Lion called the preliminaries closed. Based on the performances in the round-robin matches, he announced, the 5 sorcerers who will participate are Mordo, Banner, Tony, Pietro, and Wanda. The 2 reserves are Wong and Grandmaster Hamir. If there are no objections, you may leave now. For the next 9 days, the 7 participating sorcerers should prepare themselves. Everyone else, return to your posts and guard the sanctum and earth. Await our news. Leon retracted the projection runes and watched the departing sorcerers. Tony's, Banner's, and Wanda's displays had already won over the crowd. No one believed these 3 were mere reinforcements Leon had invited. As for Pietro, his only weapon was a magical dagger from Camartage, making him half Camartage by reputation. The 4 of them had given everyone confidence. They didn't expect to win outright, but with such strong main players, Asgard wouldn't be able to sweep them easily. Revered Lion, the 7 named sorcerers gathered around him. Revered Lion, should we prepare any etiquette for Camartage? Grandmaster Hamir asked nervously, bowing and adjusting his robe. Traditional Eastern sorcerers cared about ritual. Wong nodded. Last time we just opened a portal in front of Odin. That was hasty. Should we bring gifts this time? Mordo frowned. Instead of thinking about gifts, think about how to win. Only winning will uphold Camartage's honor. Wong raised his staff. Hamir and I are reserves, so we must plan for many contingencies, but you 5 need to think carefully about the next few days. For a moment, Wong felt a little dejected at not being a main player. Then he looked at the 5 in front of him, 4 of whom already wore strained expressions, and found being a reserve wasn't so bad after all. There were 9 days until the challenge. Pietro and Banner were already getting nervous. By the last day, they might be too jittery to sleep. Chapter 272, Christmas Day. When it came to preparation, the 5 core team members all looked to Leon. Leon, how should we get ready these next few days? Any suggestions? Banner asked. Pietro, young and restless, rubbed his hands together. How about another special training session, boss? The opponent is a god, and Wanda and I only just got our powers. Wanda beside him flinched at that. She had already seen Asgard's power in her visions, gods who fought hand-to-hand with enchanted artifacts. How many of them could Pietro have a chance against? Still, when she remembered the training would take place inside Leon's inner world, she didn't object and nodded. Tony's eyes lit up. Special training? The one you mentioned when you were clinging to my pant leg crying, 2 hours out here equals a month in there? He grinned, looking at Leon. I think that's a great idea. Do it, Leon. 9 days equals 10 years of special training, Pietro said eagerly. By the end of it, even a Norse god won't be able to beat my Mark armor. You said 10 years? Leon made a face like an old man scrolling through his phone. We're facing Asgardians, not launching into retirement. Do you want to prepare like you're jumping from 38 to 48 years old? He realized that, except for Wanda, the others were treating Asgard like literal myth. On this Earth, Asgardians were indeed the Norse gods, but their power wasn't as exaggerated as the old tales made them sound. Special training's unnecessary, Leon said, shaking his head. Relax. Aside from a few individuals, Asgardians are about as strong as Captain America. They have higher body density, 3 times an Earthling's, and much of their strength comes from divine energy, he added. If you eat well, sleep well, and keep your head clear these next few days, you'll be fine. Leon's casual tone eased the group. We can win. Mordo's furrowed brow softened, Banner's fidgeting hands stilled, and Pietro sighed with relief. He trusted Leon almost blindly now. Only Tony remained skeptical. You're just trying to soothe us, Leon, like a prison serving a gourmet meal to death row before the execution, he said. I'm serious, Leon replied. He opened a portal. Everyone calm down. Treat it like a trip to a foreign world, a friendly spar with the locals. If you have any questions while you're there, contact me online. I might not always be available, but reach out if you need to, and gather back here the morning of the 25th. He stepped through and closed the portal. The rest exchanged looks. Pietro broke the silence. So go home, eat and sleep, and meet again on Christmas Day? Tony glanced at him, produced a sling ring, and opened his own portal. 9 days. I still need to refine some Mark armor functions. I'm out. He paused, then left a warning. Don't take Leon's tone as a sign Asgardians aren't dangerous. Can someone weak really be called a god? The energy inside Leon is like a walking sun. If he brushes off a target, that doesn't mean we should. When Tony's portal closed, his words hung in the air. A sun? Isn't that extreme? Wong looked up at the sky, shielding his eyes. Wanda's expression was unreadable. Then she nodded. Mr. Stark isn't lying. Wanda had noticed a change in Leon today. Even with his biofield concealment, his aura felt different, contained, yet enormous. Under the probing of chaos magic, the energy inside him seemed comparable to a small star. If it fully erupted, it could probably obliterate the sun overhead without breaking a sweat. She knew that the sun held 99.8% of the solar system's mass. To destroy it would be to destroy the system itself. Wanda opened a portal. Leon is very strong, but Asgard shouldn't be as terrifying as Mr. Stark says. I'm going too. Pietro followed. See you in 9 days. If Boss Leon says it's okay, it's definitely okay. Bye-bye. One by one, the main team members left. Mordo and Banner lingered, exchanging hesitant looks. Leon had reassured them, but the opponents were Norse gods, older than their grandparents' grandparents. Anxiety lingered. Want to train together, Master Mordo? Banner asked. Mordo almost agreed, then remembered the Hulk roaring in a previous arena and shook his head. No, you're a brute force maven. I'm a battle mage. Different styles. He turned to the other mages on the platform and chose a few to spar with. Banner looked for allies and found Wong and Hamir both stepping back at once. We still need to prepare gifts, they said in unison. Banner sighed and picked up his briefcase. I'll go finish reinforcing the undetectable extension charm. Time moved on as the 7 prepared. Tony dedicated himself to modifying his Mark armor. He even reread the Norse myths Jarvis had compiled for Leon, then built no fewer than 10 targeted new functions into his suit. By Christmas Day, he was wearing his new Mk-15 Mark armor, dubbed the Anti-Asgard Mark. Nervous and excited, he brought Pepper to Kamartaj. When they stepped through the portal, almost everyone was already there. Because of the occasion, everyone had brought family. Tony had Pepper, Leon had Natasha, her sister, and Shirley. Banner had Betty, Wong had his girlfriend Sarah. Only Mordo and Master Hamir arrived alone. Chapter 273, Odin and his Son. On the floating platform, Leon stood at the front, looking over everyone one last time before they left. "Ready to go to Asgard?" he asked. You might not be used to celebrating Christmas on another world, but trying something new once in a while isn't a bad idea. To be honest, Leon didn't feel much about Christmas. Even though he had grown up in the Stark family this life, to him it was just a long holiday, a day to rest. For others, though the holiday meant more, Pietro spread his hands unexpectedly. "Come to think of it, Wanda and I haven't celebrated this holiday in years," Wanda nodded. "Life in Sokovia was harsh. We never had the energy to care about Christmas." "When we were with Hydra, it was worse," Pietro added. "We didn't even have personal space." Natasha spoke up next. "Yelena and I are the same. The Red Room never allowed celebrations." "Me too." Shirley squeezed Yelena's hand. "Dad and Mom spent Christmas in the lab. They wouldn't come home. Last Christmas, everyone was busy getting rid of zombies." Banner, surprisingly, chimed in as well. "Now that you mention it, I haven't celebrated in about 2 years. Ever since the Gamma exposure, the military's been after me." After Leon started the topic, he realized that none of them really celebrated Christmas. Their lives had been too hard. Wong and Hamir joined in lightheartedly. "We two Easterners don't celebrate Christmas either." Seeing the conversation heading further off course, Leon cut in. "If none of you celebrate it, it's simple. After we defeat Asgard, we'll have a big meal there before we come back." "Yay, that's great. I've lived so many years, and now I might actually eat the food of gods." Yelena was already drooling. "Yelena, we only get the feast if we win," Shirley warned. "If we lose and still stay to eat, wouldn't that be embarrassing?" "It would." Yelena hesitated, then glanced toward Tony. Mr. Stark, you'll win, right?" When Leon was near, Tony never hesitated. "We will win." "We will win. See, Shirley, we can have a big meal." "Yay!" Yelena and Shirley hugged and cheered. Their excitement spread. The 5 main team members watched the 2 sisters bounce and silently promised themselves that, legend and divinity or not, they had to win their own matches. The pressure on each of them rose. "Looks like you're all ready?" Leon said, reading their expressions. "Then let's go." He turned his face to the sky. "Heimdall, no need to bring us over. We'll come ourselves." With that, Leon traced a circle in the air and conjured a massive mystic art of portals. On the other side, the Bifrost opened onto a solemn scene. Allfather Odin flanked by Asgardian soldiers forming a welcoming guard, and 2 princes watching with wide eyes. The meeting had been scheduled for the day before the agreed battle, December 24th. Normally, such arrangements would have passed through diplomatic channels, Mordo of Kamartaj on one side, Heimdall of Asgard on the other. But this challenge was unusual. Odin had effectively sealed an agreement witnessed by the Vishanti the moment he shook Leon's hand. Leon, for his part, had written down penalties for breach of contract in painstaking detail. Odin had been forced to start communicating with Leon a month earlier, reminding the Sorcerer Supreme to arrive on time. His aging body simply couldn't tolerate any more surprises. As he grew older, his divine power had only increased, and with it, the strain on his weary frame. Their last brief exchange in the spirit realm had nearly sent him into the Odin sleep. If the Vishanti came knocking because the contract was violated, Odin felt he might truly be headed to Valhalla years earlier than he expected. So on Earth's Christmas Day, Odin had come to the Bifrost with 2 princes and a column of troops. Both Thor and Loki had grumbled at such a grand ceremony, but Odin had been firm. "When the Sorcerer Supreme of Midgard calls," he ordered Heimdall, "bring him and those sorcerers across." "Yes, Your Majesty." Heimdall stood at the Bifrost's control, hands on his guardian sword. Thor stood beside Odin, eyeing the lines of soldiers arrayed along the bridge, armored warriors with longswords, their gaze fixed on the distance. They looked every bit the elite. At this moment, however, they were an honor guard, arguably the most magnificent one in the 9 realms. Thor had never seen his father throw such a welcome for anyone. He had never expected his father to stage a spectacle even for the Asgard of Vanaheim, let alone for a few sorcerers from backward Midgard. "Why are we making such a fuss?" Thor muttered, weighing Mjolnir in his hand. "If we're going to challenge those sorcerers, the best greeting would be for me to stand in the arena and send them flying, one by one." Loki, leaning on his cane, added a barb. "Midgard is backward. The last time I went, they offered me precious fruits with iron tools." He smirked. "Father, challenging them is less impressive than taking a picnic to Vanaheim." Normally, Loki would relish disagreeing with Thor, but today he couldn't support his brother more. What was the point of personally welcoming those Midgarders? Odin's single sharp eye swept over his sons. Both Thor and Loki were far, far short of his expectations. In contrast, the consecutive Sorcerer Supremes from Kamartaj had shown astonishing strength. "We are not welcoming those sorcerers," Odin said, letting his sons feel the weight of his disappointment. Then, softer, he added, "We are only welcoming one of them." "One person?" Thor misunderstood, chest puffed. "Is he my opponent? Ha! I promise I will win glorious victory for Asgard." Loki looked thoughtful, but equally dismissive of anyone from Midgard. Odin watched their reactions and sighed. "He will not participate in today's challenge. You two, work hard and win a few more matches." Heimdall interrupted smoothly. "Your Majesty, the Sorcerer Supreme has refused the Bifrost's summons." Odin's one eye narrowed. "They're not using the Bifrost? Are they afraid of losing? Do the people of Midgard surrender without a fight?" Thor bristled. Averse to cowardice, he rarely lost his temper, but the idea of guests who wouldn't even enter Asgard's gate angered him. Loki's laugh was cold. "Father, it seems our guests are so afraid they don't even dare to step through Asgard's gate. I say we cancel this ridiculous challenge." Chapter 13. Rocky is stunned. Loki stared out across the star-strewn expanse beyond the Bifrost. His disdainful gaze seemed to pierce the distant cosmos, settling on far-off Midgard. With Asgard's prestige, those mages from a backward world should be trembling, he thought. Even if the Sorcerer Supreme had the favor of his father, to propose a contest between Midgard's weak mages and Asgard, she was a presumptuous commoner who didn't know her place. "Father, let me go to Midgard again," Loki said. "As the 9 realms' foremost mage, I'll teach them humility." He imagined them prostrating themselves like beggars before an emperor. The smile that creased his face was confident. This would be the perfect chance to prove himself to Odin. Odin only glanced at him, then lifted Gungnir and took a step toward the bridge's end. "They're here." Odin's one eye fixed on the far end of the Bifrost. At the bridge's terminus, in front of the spherical control room, a golden spark shot from the void and seemed to ignite invisible tinder. It multiplied and brightened until it formed a circular portal. Through it, 14 human-shaped figures from Midgard peered out. Most wore yellow-brown mage robes. A few were in casual clothes. When the portal opened, they looked around with open curiosity. They stared at Odin, his son, and the Asgardian honor guard as if inspecting a museum exhibit, not kneeling before divine royalty. They were as relaxed as a group of tourists at some ruined imperial palace, chattering and commenting, even criticizing the throne's comfort compared to their workstations. Thor and Loki were taken aback. Were these really the Kamartaj mages come for a challenge, or some lost tour group? How had they opened a portal to Asgard? Loki had never heard of any long-range portal besides the Bifrost. And did they have to be so loud? "Oh my God, is that the fat old man up front, the hot male lead next to him, and Bambi? Wait, I can't tell who the last one is because he's not holding a weapon," a bearded man muttered. "Tony, why are they glaring at us? They look so serious. Should we bow?" a bespectacled man asked. "Wow, surely, look, the waterfalls pour into space. So cool," a blonde exclaimed. "It's beautiful, like those floating islands in Small World," a little girl squealed. Loki didn't know what Odin and Thor were thinking, but he was fighting to control his expression. How could Midgarders show such little reverence for gods? "You with the glasses, if you thought bowing was appropriate, why aren't you kneeling? Why are you all so casually oblivious? And those women gawking at the river, ignorant fools." This was exactly what he'd expected, a disorganized rabble. Worse, uneducated bumpkins who'd never seen the wider world. If Odin hadn't been beside him, Loki would have shouted for them to kneel. He was scowling inwardly when the only robed figure in the group looked up and, recognizing Odin, greeted him familiarly. "Long time no see, your majesty, Odin." He raised an eyebrow and, as he had the last time they'd met, deliberately dispelled the biofield, concealing his strength in Odin's presence. A wave of power rolled out, an aura at the peak of a realm lord and a pressure of immortal-level will. Immediately, white-haired Odin's eye widened. In a few short months, Leon's power had increased dramatically. Odin's expression betrayed the shock of someone who had just seen something unexpected and overwhelming. From that, Leon felt a satisfying swell of pride. He re-enveloped himself in the biofield. Though Leon's revelation had been intended for Odin, Loki, standing beside the All-Father, had looked directly into Leon's eyes. A crushing willpower surged into Loki's mind like a star imploding. His consciousness fragmented, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed unconscious. "Loki! Loki!" Thor dashed forward and caught him as he fell. "Loki, what's wrong? What happened?" Thor shook his brother and felt Loki's aura dwindling rapidly. "Father! Father! Come quickly. Look at Loki." He pointed at Leon and the others with a mix of shock and anger. Did you do something?" "Thor, calm down. Loki has simply fainted," Odin said, already recognizing the effect. Leon's will was so powerful that even Odin felt it. Looking into those eyes was like having one's soul cut by blades. It was no surprise Loki had been overwhelmed. Fortunately, it was a pressure of will, not a physical assault. Loki would be unconscious and weakened temporarily, but not fatally harmed. "Take him back to the palace. Let Frigga tend to him," Odin ordered. He turned to Leon, who had flown close behind. "Lord Leon, our challenge will likely be delayed a few hours." Leon glanced at Loki, pale in Thor's arms, and felt awkward. "Your Majesty Odin, I was presumptuous earlier. I know some methods to heal the soul. May I come and take a look?" Odin nodded. "Then I will trouble you, Lord Leon." Thor's eyes widened as he glanced at Leon. "Did you really hurt Loki?" "Thor," Odin snapped as he rose toward the heavenly palace with Thor and Loki. "Loki brought this on himself." He didn't think a stranger was to blame for someone's foolishness in staring at a vastly stronger will. Leon followed, adding, "When we met last time, Your Majesty Odin, you tested me the same way, but there were no bystanders then." Thor was stunned. It sounded as if the fault might indeed lie with Loki. Chapter 275. Chapter Opening. Before leaving, Odin made sure Heimdall would escort the other guests from Kamartaj on a tour of Asgard. The honor guard had barely time to sound a fanfare before the welcoming ceremony was hurriedly wrapped up. Tony and the others followed Heimdall, bewildered, walking along the Bifrost into Asgard. "What just happened? Did Leon really take out one of the opponents first?" Tony whispered. "Does he not trust our strength that much?" "I don't know," Mordo said. "But the last time I was here, Leon and Odin stared at each other for a few minutes, then shook hands and made peace." Wong nodded. "That was a clash at the level of the soul. The antlered man who fell just now might have been affected." "Really? So Bambi was innocent after all," Tony mused, rubbing his chin. He frowned. His armor didn't seem to have a counter for that kind of attack. The others nearby perked up, listening to the conversation. Then Heimdall, acting as their guide, turned and said, "He is not Bambi. He is Prince Loki, one of His Majesty's 2 sons." "He's a prince?" Tony stepped closer. "I haven't introduced myself." "Tony Stark," Heimdall said without looking away. "I know who you are. I know all of you." Tony blinked. "Wow, so you're Heimdall, like the God King said. You're not exactly what the stories describe." Heimdall remained silent, eyes fixed ahead, expressionless as a sentinel. Tony smirked. "Not much of a talker, huh?" "Very godlike." Tony looked around. "So tell us about Asgard. The gravity here feels heavier than on Earth, and is that a river flowing into the cosmos?" They stood on the Bifrost, a bridge of 7-colored light that stretched above Asgard's sea and linked the realm to a control station at the world's edge. A torrent ran along the Bifrost, spilling like a silver waterfall into the void beyond. From their current position at the edge, they could see millions of tons of water plunging into the abyss below. "Asgard isn't very different from the other star realms of the 9 realms," Heimdall said at last. "It is like a celestial body, yet not a planet. It does not rotate or orbit. It is more like the heaven above, earth below of your old myths. As the gatekeeper of Asgard, Heimdall proved an excellent guide. He spoke at length and with a quiet authority about his homeland, and everyone listened with interest. After a short walk along the Bifrost, Heimdall led them to mounts and they rode into the city. Why is your Bifrost basically an Einstein-Rosen bridge with enough energy to tear apart a planet, and yet everyone rides horses to get around? Tony complained. He was amused and irritated by Asgard's mix of the primitive and the godlike, magic and divine power layered on high technology. At first glance, Asgard was all gold, golden buildings like swords thrust into the sky. The central palace looked like 1,000 golden blades fused together, dazzling light spilling from every surface. Even from a distance, an unmistakable martial nobility hung in the air. Riding through the streets, Tony and his group turned a few heads. Word had already spread about the scheduled contest between realms, and the Asgardian onlookers scrutinized the foreigners who followed Heimdall. Aside from Tony and Pietro, whose muscles were impossible to miss, the group looked like women and middle-aged people, certainly not the sort of warriors Asgardians admired. A few whispered and shook their heads. These people were weak. They could not possibly be a match for Thor and the Warriors 3. They look down on us? Tony heard someone mutter. You heard right, Banner said weakly. Someone just said my muscles are flabby. It's not just muscle worship. Betty sulked from her saddle. They're completely ignoring women. Natasha sighed. Here, power is everything. Women tend to be less valued because their strength is usually less than men's. And did you notice they only mention Thor when they talk about the princes? They didn't even bring up Loki. Maybe he isn't respected because he's not strong, Natasha added. In Asgard, only great strength earns recognition, Heimdall confirmed. If you want respect, perform well in the contest. Tony raised an eyebrow. Then they're in for a big surprise. He glanced at Wanda. He still didn't know the full extent of Asgardian power, but Wanda's abilities were formidable in any realm. We've got an ace. Heimdall allowed himself a small smile. I have seen your battles. All of you are extraordinary. I look forward to you teaching the princes a lesson. They toured Asgard for 3 hours. At one point, they ran into the Warriors 3 in the palace. The trio tossed a few cutting remarks before striding off. Jarvis scanned them and reported their physical stats, no greater than Pietro's, which raised Tony's confidence considerably. At midday, the group was led into the Asgardian arena, a colossal circular coliseum ringed with packed stands. Odin and Leon stood side by side on the main dais, and behind them waited a line of Asgardian combatants, apparently the 2 princes, the Warriors 3, and an unfamiliar female warrior. The prince who had been unconscious earlier, Loki, was awake now, though his face was sullen. With a gesture, Leon used telekinesis to lift Tony and the others onto the main platform. The audience erupted into thunderous cheers. The visitors from Kamartaj could feel how deeply Asgard revered martial prowess. Odin began the formalities, explaining the origins of Kamartaj to the Asgardians and the purpose of the scheduled contest. He specially introduced Leon, stressing the strength of the bond between Asgard and Kamartaj. Leon then spoke briefly. The opening remarks concluded, and the warriors from both sides retired to their respective preparation areas to get ready. The first match would begin in half an hour. Chapter 276, The Strongest versus the Weakest. Leon, how do we decide the order of appearance? Tony asked first, surrounded by the team in the lounge. Leon answered calmly. Since it's Asgard's home game, they get to name the contestant for the first match. After that, we choose our contestant in response. For the second match, we'll decide first, and then they'll respond, and so on until one side reaches 3 wins. Leon waved a hand. Their first contestant is the Great Prince, Thunder God Thor. I think any of you can try. The current Thunder God Thor hadn't even awakened his full Thunder God power yet. He was only a god of Mjolnir. Even if Mordo went up, there was a chance of success. But the moment they heard it was Thor, the team's faces grew serious. Thor's the star of that blockbuster, right? He must be their strongest, Tony said. The second prince Loki made a fool of himself at the welcoming ceremony, Pietro added. They'll want to secure the first match to stabilize morale, so they're sending their big name out first. Tony's big eyes swept the others. That means if we beat him, Asgard's morale will take a huge hit, and the rest of the fights will be easier. Banner nodded. So should we send our strongest? All eyes turned to Wanda. I don't mind, Wanda said. No, not right now, Tony objected, crossing his arms and taking a few steps. Matching strongest to strongest is dumb. We don't know much about these Asgardians. Wanda should only go if she's sure to win. Wanda wanted to say she was confident, but a thunderous roar from outside cut her off. Tens of thousands chanted Thor's name, the cheers deafening. The team crowded to the lounge door and peered through the narrow gap in the thick wood. Thunder God Thor strode into the arena, holding Mjolnir high, smiling sunny and waving to the crowd. The audience went wild. Is this guy Asgard's favorite? He's more popular than I am at press conferences, Tony said. Everyone below is his subject. Of course they cheer, Pietro said. You don't hand out checks to the audience at press conferences. How do you know I don't? Tony asked. Ah, you actually give money out at press conferences. Actually, no, I don't. Tony shivered, then clapped his hands. All right, you've seen how popular he is. Fighting away from home against him will be pressure enough. So I think, Tony looked around, I should go first. Everyone froze. Why you, Tony? Banner frowned. I thought you'd say since they sent their strongest, we should send our weakest. That's the best strategy. Tony slapped Banner's shoulder. Smart, Banner. Exactly what I was thinking. Then I should go. I'm the weakest, Banner said. No, I'm the weakest. I'll go fight their blockbuster protagonist. Win or lose, the odds in the other matches will be better for you, Tony said. Banner protested. Even Hulk was beaten by you yesterday. I'm the weakest. They started arguing about who was weakest. Pietro and Mordo exchanged puzzled looks. If Tony and Banner were arguing to be the weakest, then maybe they were far stronger than they let on. Leon cut through the bickering. Tony will go. He spread his hands. Thor's power is concentrated in Mjolnir, and Tony's power comes from his armor. It should be an interesting match. Faces darkened. Leon, the Sorcerer Supreme, seemed unusually focused on excitement. Leon, maybe I should go, Mordo offered. I'm the weakest. It doesn't matter if I lose. Tony interrupted immediately. How are you weak, Mordo? You're a great sorcerer. You can open the mirror dimension with a few hand seals. You're our trump card. He produced an arc reactor and tapped it against his chest, one hand on the door, ready to pull it open. The Sorcerer Supreme decided, how can it be changed? Everyone wait for my signal. Jarvis will send analysis data, Tony said as he yanked the heavy bolt from the wooden door. Just then, Pepper stepped out from the family section. She walked up to Tony, smoothed his sorcerer's robe, and whispered, Don't get hurt, or you won't be able to get out of bed for a week. It wasn't clear whether Pepper meant he'd be bedridden from injuries or if she meant something else. Tony's pupils narrowed and his face paled a little. Are you worried about me, or trying to scare me? He said. Isn't this a better time for a hug? He added, quick to deflect. Of course I'm worried, Pepper said. Golden photon energy shimmered around her as she hugged him. Instead of reassuring him, the brilliant light stirred something shadowy in Tony. He moved toward the arena a little unsteady. Leon chuckled under his breath. For most warriors, a lover's touch and a tender embrace made them braver. For Tony, it brought a strange sorrow, like wind sighing over cold water. The team watched as he stepped out into the sunlight and up onto the arena platform amid the Asgardian cheers for Thor. Watching Tony's back, Banner asked Leon quietly, why did he insist on facing Thor? He knows he's not the weakest. You still don't understand him, Banner. Leon slipped his hands behind his back and assumed a calm, contemplative posture, like the Ancient One. Tony knows he isn't the weakest. He doesn't want to send Wanda when the outcome isn't certain, nor does he want us to send someone so weak they'll get eliminated without testing the opponent. He wants to go himself, use everything he has to probe Thor's true power level and judge the other Asgardians from that. Also, Tony hates being shown up. Leon gave a small smile. Those are the real reasons. It didn't ultimately matter who went first. Leon had already arranged for outside assistance at Camartage, Scarlet Witch and Hulk among them. If they still failed, Leon would tie Tony up, force him to drink Zeus spring water, and then toss him on Pepper's bed for a week. Chapter 277, Tony Saul. Every corner of the gladiator arena chanted Thor's name. When Tony walked onto the platform, he almost had the feeling he was staring down a living wall of people. It wasn't until he reached Thor that the Thunder God finally lowered his raised arm and pressed his palm toward the crowd. The boiling arena fell silent as if hot water had been doused with liquid nitrogen. Tony was reminded again why this big, grinning golden retriever was so popular. He'd already nicknamed Thor the Golden Retriever in his head. The guy was all shaggy hair and earnest, simple smiles. Thor clasped his hands on his hips and boomed, "I am Thor, son of Odin. Your sorcerer supreme is powerful, someone even my father respects." "But why am I your opponent?" Tony quipped. Thor blinked. "I thought a bald sorcerer would come out, Wong or Mordo. My father said he came to Asgard with your sorcerer supreme last time, so he should be strong too," Thor said with what he meant to be friendly concern. "The battle hasn't officially started. Go call him up. You might get hurt fighting me." He hefted Mjolnir and gestured grandly at Tony. "After all, I'm too strong." Thor didn't need to say it outright. The contempt was all over it. Tony's face stayed placid. "You mean call him up?" "Yes, exactly. Go fetch that sorcerer. I'll wait here." Thor sounded pleased that Tony accepted the suggestion, but Tony walked a few steps toward the lounge, then stopped, turned, and tilted his head. "Actually, I just remembered something." What?" Thor looked genuinely puzzled. "You know, on Earth we don't usually bring out heavy hitters to handle guys like you, sun-kissed beach bros who smile a lot." Tony pointed to his chest. "I'm plenty. I can handle the always smiling types." Thor's grin faded. He narrowed his eyes. "Midgardian sorcerer, did you just provoke me?" "You call this provocation?" Tony shook his head. "This is a pre-fight declaration of victory. Every wrestling match has one." Thor tightened his grip on Mjolnir. "So you're gonna fight me?" "We already are." Tony launched himself at Thor, empty-handed. After the fight with Captain America, he'd spent 2 months secretly training in hand-to-hand. Now was a good time to see what the Thunder God's raw physical strength looked like up close. Thor saw Tony coming with empty hands, placed Mjolnir on the ground, and charged too, unarmed. The crowd exploded in a fresh roar, cheering for their prince. Fists met hard on the arena platform. Thor staggered back 3 steps. His eyes widened. He could call Mjolnir at any moment and unleash divine power, but 90% of his destructive strength came through that hammer. Without it, he was surprisingly human. Tony, whose single-arm strength topped 100 tons with his suit suppressed, had shoved him back. The Asgard around the arena froze. Cheers choked off like something caught in throats. Tony was stunned too, half expecting a knockout. He braced like he had when he'd been clouded by the Hulk, ready for the armor to latch on and start round 2. Why was this mythic thunder god so weak at close quarters? Tony didn't stop to answer the question. He moved in, grabbed Thor's wrist, and landed a rapid series of short and long punches. With each strike, Thor was forced back. The blows did little lasting harm, but they burned Thor's pride. So many Asgardians were watching. "Ah, Mjolnir!" Thor roared and yanked the hammer up from the sand. The instant his hand closed on the handle, his power surged back. His strength climbed, and he pushed into his true force. Tony kept coming with short punches. Thor leapt back to avoid the flurry, then swung Mjolnir in a wide arc and brought it down into Tony's chest. Bones cracked under the impact. Tony rocketed high into the air, slammed into the arena rocks, and the daze that had crept into him evaporated. Pain splashed across his face, but his eyes flashed with calculation. "Jarvis, start data collection." "It's been collecting since before you moved, sir," came the dry voice. "Even better." Nanomaterial flooded out from the arc reactor in Tony's chest and braided around him, forming a gold and red battlesuit, the Mark 15. Its main frame was a gold titanium alloy nanomesh. Critical components were lined with enchanted metal hand-carried from Kamartaj. There was internal nano-vibranium for energy buffering and rapid synthesis. In short, it was Frankenstein's happy marriage of tech and magic. Thor brought Mjolnir down and charged again. Tony fired the suit's thrusters and hovered into the air. He didn't dodge. He formed a vibranium shield with his right hand and planted himself. "Jarvis, sync up." "Yes, sir." The back thrusters flared. Mjolnir slammed into the vibranium shield with a ringing crash. For a heartbeat, Tony hung motionless in midair. The hammer's blow rebounded and drove Thor backward hard. He landed on the arena floor, skidding to a stop. A chorus of gasps rippled through the stands. Disbelief and worry mingled on every face. Tony dropped down and stood before Thor. The Thunder God looked up at the armored figure and, after a few quick breaths, split into a grin full of competitive fire. "You're not a sorcerer? Good. I don't much fancy fighting sorcerers. This is more fun." He swung Mjolnir and pointed it at the sky. A bolt of lightning speared up from the hammer and tore the arena sky open. Clouds roiled. Thunder rolled across the stands. "Try this, Midgardian warrior," Thor bellowed, unleashing the sky at Tony. Lightning slithered like living things, gathered under his command, and aimed straight for the armored man. "Sir, the vibranium shield can't entirely absorb that lightning strike," Jarvis warned. "Then don't block it," Tony said. "Deploy the exclusive function I engineered for Thunder Gods. I didn't expect to actually need it, but surprises." The suit's nanoplates peeled and rearranged. Where the armor met the air, 4 articulated legs of energy unfurled and anchored in front of Tony, spinning slowly into a vortex. The contraption was an energy absorption array built to feed off electrical discharges. When Thor's lightning struck, the array took it on full overload. Electricity arced across the suit as it siphoned and converted the raw power. "Energy intake at 200%, sir." "Beautiful," Tony grinned. "Now let's give it back." The right arm of the armor reconfigured, plates telescoping, emitters locking into a cannon, energy focused into a blinding beam aimed at Thor. Chapter 278. Chapter 13. The Resurrection of Thor. The moment the fungus god armor spiked to 200%, Tony knew he had made the right call, adding new, targeted functions. The arc reactor still ran on that badass metal Leon had described, a tesseract isotope whose structure was the most perfect in the universe. The element hadn't changed, but Tony had redesigned the arc reactor itself, using warship energy tech from the alien world's optical computer. One reactor now did the work of 10 old ones. Its peak output could approach 100 billion joules per second. And yet the lightning being charged up by the big golden-haired man across the arena could actually backfeed the arc reactor to 200%. Tony thought, if that lightning hit the fungus god armor unprepared, it might be charred before it could even absorb the bolt. Luckily, he had prepared. "Jarvis, funnel all the overload into the laser cannon. Let the Point Break protagonist taste his own lightning." Every nano-component of the fungus god armor kicked into precise operation. With Jarvis coordinating, enormous energy focused into the laser cannon. The muzzle, which usually took minutes to charge, flared instantly. Golden light swelled like a miniature sun over the arena. The Asgardian crowd felt the dread of that cannon. If it fired, it could destroy a small comet. Hearts leapt as they screamed at their prince to dodge. Thor didn't dodge. The more the crowd yelled, the more Thor dug in like a stubborn mule. The muzzle faced him and sent a prickling danger through his skin, but he neither moved away nor tried to stop Tony from charging. Instead, he swung Mjolnir and waited. As the scorching penetrative beam lanced toward him, he roared, hurled Mjolnir, and followed it himself into the path of the laser. Thor charged. Mjolnir met the beam with a titanic clash. The impact shuddered through the arena. Debris sprayed against the energy dome and rained down with a harsh clatter. A moment later, both hammer and man were thrown out. Mjolnir flew. Thor flew. The laser cannon punched into the energy shield and died down after a few seconds. Thor slammed into the shield, skidded down like a slab of meat stuck to a wall, and lay still. The Asgardians went silent. Tony stood stunned in the arena. Everyone in the lounges was speechless. On the main stage, Odin sighed and turned his head away, no longer watching his foolish son. In the VIP box, Mordo stared wide-eyed at Thor and asked in a daze, "Why did he go head-to-head?" Wang shook his head. "Maybe he forgot his glasses today. His vision's terrible. He tried to dodge, but ran right into it." Tony stood quiet for a beat. "Is this guy overconfident, or did he leave his brain back in Asgard?" he muttered. "Jarvis, did we win?" "It appears so, sir. Scans indicate a high probability that Thor is unconscious." "Damn, I haven't even used half the fungus god armor's functions. I haven't tried the 10 rings yet, and I won. If this is Asgard's strongest warrior, his strength is impressive, but his judgment less so. I think I overestimated them." The fungus god armor on Tony's arm reverted from laser cannon mode. He looked toward the main stage and waited. Around him, the silence held, "Excuse me, does this contest even have a referee?" he called, glancing at Odin. Before Odin could answer, the wooden door of the Asgardian warrior's lounge swung open. Loki, horned helmet glinting, stepped out. He glanced at the fallen Thor, then leveled a look at Tony. "Foolish Midgardian," he said. "Do you truly think you've won? No, you've only awakened a god's wrath." Tony frowned. One brainless stunt had already happened. Now another short-tempered royal prince was sauntering out to gloat. Jarvis chimed in, "Sir, Thor appears to be regaining consciousness." "It's been less than 30 seconds, Tony blinked. Thor still had his eyes closed, but his fingers twitched. "That counts as waking. Holy moly." A low metallic whoosh cut through the air. Tony stepped back reflexively, and Mjolnir swept past him and landed in Thor's hand. Electric light cracked around Thor as he rose with a roar. Lightning coiled from his hair to his eyes like a live cable. He swung Mjolnir at Tony. The hammer hit Tony's chest like a small mountain. The nano-armor over his torso shattered, and Tony was hurled backward. Thor didn't pause. He chased, shouting Mjolnir as he pounded Tony again and again. Nanobots swarmed to repair the damaged plates, only to be smashed aside. Chunks of fungus god armor flew off. Thor looked determined to finish Tony in one brutal volley. He kept hammering, sending Tony careening through the air. Then Thor charged up another swing. This time, the nanobots on Tony's chest had already been replaced with a vibranium layer. When the hammer came down, the rebound shoved Thor backward instead. Tony seized the moment, fired his thrusters, and put distance between them. "This guy's a whole different person with Mjolnir," Tony said, serious now. "Maybe Mjolnir is his true form." "Good. Looks like I can try the rest," he added. "Jarvis, 10 rings mode." Tony slung the 10 rings out mid-flight. Jarvis guided them into position. One by one, the rings embedded into the fungus god armor's joints and lit up. Energy spilled over, cloaking the armor in a shimmering gauze. "Hey, my friend who just came back from the dead. Let's keep going." Tony stopped running and charged back at Thor. Thor, who'd been pursuing, met him with a wide hammer arc. "Perfect timing," he bellowed. They collided in midair. Tony fought with his fists and feet. Thor, realizing his lightning would be absorbed by some of the armor's systems, abandoned bolts and attacked physically with Mjolnir. The two battered one another from sky to arena and back again. The crowd roared once more. The Asgardians screamed encouragement for their prince. Tony ducked away, only when the thrill of the fight left him satisfied. "Ha! What a rush! Now I know how Leon felt when he punched Dormammu," he laughed. "Time to try magic, Jarvis. Switch to sorcery mode. Activate my magic-powered palm cannon." Jarvis was as efficient as ever. He did exactly what Tony asked, even when the command was questionable. He even understood how Tony's magic-powered palm cannon worked. To Thor, it might as well have been a weapon of mass destruction. With Jarvis guiding the nanotech, the armor's arms and chest rippled like liquid metal. In under a second, the nanofibers reconfigured into magical alloys. Some panels glowed with an agate sheen, materials optimized to conduct arcane energy. "Magic-powered palm cannon ready, sir," Jarvis reported. "Excellent," Tony called. He stopped mid-retreat, raised his right hand toward Thor, and funneled his magic into the 10 rings. The palm cannon hummed to life. The muzzle flared with a red light, mystical and beautiful, not the clean white blue of a tech laser. To Thor, it was still just a beam. He scowled, then grinned with blunt confidence. "You can't beat Thor twice with the same trick, Midgardian." Lightning gathered around Mjolnir from the angry clouds above. Thor stood wrapped in electricity, every hair and fiber of him a crackling conduit. The Asgardian crowd roared. They loved this. An opponent toppled only to rise again, to smash the enemy's arrogance and turn defeat into triumph. Their shouts hoarse, they watched as Thor charged at Tony, hammer held high. "Come, give it everything you've got." Tony watched the thunder-soaked sprint and blinked. He couldn't fathom the plan. Is he really going to try to brute force it again? He thought. Do these gods all share one brainwave? But Tony's expression shifted to amusement. Fine, if he wants to ram it home, we'll give him a finale. He looked at Jarvis and smirked. "Prepare." "Ready, sir," Jarvis replied. Tony leveled the cannon and shouted, "Expelliarmus!" A thick crimson beam erupted from the palm cannon, cutting up into the sky faster than a comet. It hit Mjolnir dead center. For a heartbeat, the hammer held, the lightning crawling over the red light, and then something else happened. The beam didn't shatter the hammer, it severed Thor's link to it. Divine power dumped out of Thor like a plug pulled from a socket. The force yanked Mjolnir from his grip and slammed it away. The beam punched Thor in the chest and hurled him back into the arena's energy shield. He hit, slid, and lay still. Even as he crumpled, Thor's grin hadn't quite gone. It made him look absurdly heroic and vulnerable at the same time, brave to the end, but oddly naive. Silence fell. The Asgardian crowd, whooped a second ago, now stood frozen, arms raised in disbelief. They stared at Mjolnir, thudding to the ground, then at Thor, sprawled and inert, and wondered if the world had flipped upside down. High above, Tony hovered and shrugged, amusement flickering across his features. Who knew the Expelliarmus cannon would do more than I thought? It didn't just knock his weapon away, it lopped off his entire power source. Jarvis's tone was dry, a calm counter to Tony's gloating. Your preparations were apt, sir. Severing the link between Thor and Mjolnir was sound strategy. Tony puffed out his chest. Lion used to say Harry Potter's Expelliarmus could be as deadly as an unforgivable curse. Ours is a little more advanced. He fired a second red beam. This one's for good measure. The beam shoved Thor back toward the shield boundary and began stripping what little armor remained. Tony watched for a moment, then the other palm cannon in his left hand flared, blue-silver and humming with electricity. He's down and can't call lightning right now, Tony explained to Jarvis. Time for a little demonstration. Tony's recent tinkering with the bloodline potion, infused with Thunderbird essence, let him manipulate storm energy crudely but effectively. Channeling that bloodline into the 10 rings, he focused a bolt through the magic conductive plates. A pillar of lightning, thick as a man's forearm, surged from the cannon and struck Thor. The unconscious prince twitched. The electricity made his jaw clench, his eyes roll back, his body shudder violently. Where the Expelliarmus had stripped his armor, the lightning found bare flesh. Thor jerked and convulsed like a puppet on a frequency he couldn't control. Tony's grin widened as he adjusted the pulse frequency, delighted and disturbingly clinical in how he treated the display. In the stands, faces among the Asgardians contorted with a mix of horror and humiliation, some as if they had lost a kin, others like they'd been made to eat something foul. Odin, perched on the dais, went deathly pale. Enough. The single word from Odin snapped the crowd. He slammed Gungnir into the platform. An invisible shockwave rippled outward. People staggered and fell. Before it hit Tony, Lion strode into the arena. Without ceremony, he punched through the energy shield and casually dispersed the power radiating from Gungnir. "Excuse us," Lion said in a voice as smooth as a blade. "Prince Thor's vitality is unusually tenacious, and we weren't operating under any restricting rules." Tony had little choice but to continue his methods. Lion scooped Thor up like a sack and tossed him toward the main platform. Odin caught his son with a dark, terrible expression. "Kamar-Taj wins," he said, voice low and controlled. "The second match will begin in half an hour." Odin could accept the loss on the scoreboard. He could not accept the spectacle, the image of Thor subdued and electrocuted, dignity trampled in front of all Asgard. He had misjudged the Midgardian mages. They were not merely strong, they were showy, relentless, and more dangerous than he had imagined. Chapter 3. After Tony's display, Odin could no longer dismiss the sorcerers of Kamar-Taj. The second battle began with Kamar-Taj sending their contestant out first. After Tony, having returned victorious, offered his analysis, Kamar-Taj sent Wanda into the arena. Odin watched for a few seconds, tapping into his divine sight. Then he fell silent. He sighed, staring up at the starry sky beyond Asgard with a distant look. No one could tell whether he was doubting the meaning of life or privately regretting that he had not fallen in battle earlier. Perhaps then it would have been Thor, not him, left without honor. Kamar-Taj did not play by Asgard's rules. They even sent a contestant like Wanda. Odin finally understood why Leon had proposed this challenge 6 months ago. He had come ready. Odin stopped interfering with the order of contestants in Asgard's lounge and sent a message to Leon to return to the main platform. A few minutes later, Sif stepped into the arena. Because the challenger was a female sorcerer, Asgard matched her with Sif, one of their finest female warriors. Thor, now sober, crouched with Loki behind the wooden door of their lounge, watching the fight through a crack. Why don't we just go out and watch? Loki suggested. I just lost a match. Loki, I was taken out by that Iron Man, completely humiliated. Thor said, defeated. How could you possibly want to step out there now? Aren't you worried everyone will stare? Loki spread his hands, feigning concern. He knew exactly why Thor didn't want to be seen. He only asked to needle him. Besides, Sif will want your support. She'll perform better if you cheer for her, and maybe we can win back the first match you lost. Thor hesitated, then shook his head. Sif is one of the strongest warriors in this star region. She proved herself through her own excellence. She won't lose. And that Iron Man earlier had to be the strongest of Midgard's champions. No one else could be stronger than him. That's right. That's how it is. Thor repeated, partly to Loki, partly to reassure himself. But Loki, hands clasped behind his back, pushed the knife in deeper. Even you lost, and spectacularly. Brother, how can you be certain Sif won't lose too? Thor's face drained of color as the memory replayed. When Odin first mentioned this competition, Thor had sneered, thinking it mere sport, a chance to bully weak challengers. He had volunteered first to show Asgard's strength, and instead had been the one laid low. He had felt ridiculous, as if he were a clown. No, Loki, that wasn't a dwarf, Thor weakly protested. What was it then? An eel that's been electrocuted and floated to the surface? Loki's grin widened. Oh no. Thor covered his face and leaned his forehead against the door. Loki's eyes glittered. He reached out, about to weave a subtle charm to pull the wooden door open and force Thor into view, exposing his brother's disheveled shame. Loki loved nothing more than seeing Thor humbled. Then, the roaring cheers outside the lounge suddenly turned into a string of shocked gasps. The sound collapsed into a stunned silence that spread through the arena like a cold wind. The few inside the lounge froze. What's happened? Did Sif win already? Thor and Loki peered through the crack at the same time. Across the arena, a thin, veil-like crimson energy had emerged, wrapping everywhere like mist. It coiled around Sif and lifted her off the ground. She roared, every muscle taut as she struggled against the bonds, but despite all her strength, her body remained rigid and motionless. Her opponent, the Kamartaj sorceress from Midgard, floated serenely beside her, composed and relaxed, as if she had merely toyed with a feather. It took only a few words and a few gestures from that sorceress to render Sif unable to resist. Sif, the famed shield of the Nine Realms, had lost her fighting ability in an instant. It was no longer merely surprising. It was absurd. Sif, she's lost too? Thor's eyes widened in disbelief. Loki, who had only been plotting further embarrassment for his brother, frowned. He had underestimated these Midgarders. He had believed Tony's win had been an anomaly, a trick of the tournament. Now it was clear things were different. A voice echoed from the main platform. Second match goes to Kamartaj. The third battle will begin in 30 minutes. Asgard will send their contestant first. Odin's pronouncement made Thor and Loki exchange alarmed glances. If we lose the third match, it's over. Who are we sending this time? Thor whispered. The Warriors Three glanced at one another nervously. They had joked and boasted before, confident they could dispatch those sorcerers with ease, but now none of them dared step forward and promise victory. Lose the third match, and they would be nailed to Asgard's pillar of shame. Their eyes shifted searchingly, and finally alighted on Loki. Loki started. Me? On the main platform, Leon and Odin stood side by side. I did not expect Kamartaj to produce so many excellent sorcerers after all these years, Odin admitted, eyes on Sif's ashen face in the arena and on Wanda, who drifted back toward the lounge with a faint smile. Leon shook his head. Earth has many talented people. The Ancient One simply allowed nature to take its course instead of scouring the world for them. That may not be the only reason, Odin said. I heard you repelled Dormammu not long ago. Who told you that? Leon asked. Word travels even through the fringe dimensions and into hell. Demons love to spin tales. I heard Mephisto himself sent reparations to Kamartaj. Leon shrugged. He sent a useless magical trinket. I'm more interested in the casket of ancient winters and the eternal flame. A few months back, apart from the Eye Demon, several Hell Lords had attacked Earth and later sent offerings. They were empty gestures, and Leon had tucked them away in the New York Sanctum's vault. His preoccupation with artifacts silenced Odin for a moment. At that instant, Loki, adorned in a horned crown and resplendent robes, strode up onto the platform. "You're sending Loki for the third match," Leon said with interest. Odin gave Leon a wary look and sent a mental command to the lounge. From Kamartaj's side, a middle-aged man with glasses and a leather briefcase emerged. He moved with the calm assurance of someone who had come prepared. Leon smiled lightly. "You might want to ready your artifacts, Your Majesty, Odin."